All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Cool Beans Hot Stuff. Today is another episode of Newsweek Wednesdays. We didn't do one last week because last Wednesday I didn't really know what to do a episode about. There was a few little things happening here and there, but it wasn't anything big that I could do like a whole 2 or 3 hour stream on. So it's like, well, it's so weak. I gotta get some kind of what's the word process together. So when there's a slow news week, I can still have a Wednesday show. Still have like little articles saved up or whatever. But this week, completely different. There was so much going on this week and today that I didn't know what to do. I was kind of like stunned for like, fuck, what should I cover? I did already have an entire thing set up for you guys to cover Trump's executive order regarding flag burning because I've seen a lot of people debating that online on X. So I thought I'd throw my hat in the ring and we'll go through the executive order and we'll go through relevant case files with the Supreme Court and things like that. So we kind of got an idea of what exactly is happening, what is being said, and then go through some people's different opinions on it and what the results of that could potentially be. But I almost didn't do that. I had it all set up, and that's about the only reason that I did decide to go with that. Because, gosh, today they had the mass shooting in, I think, Minneapolis, which is horrible. I'm sorry to hear about that. That's real bummer news, man. And I think 2 kids died, as far as I'm aware, from what I've heard. So that's absolutely horrible. And that would have been something to cover. They had that little Scottish girl. I don't know. I forget when that happened, but that was like a few days. That little Scottish girl with the fucking knife in the axe. And everybody on Twitter is making like all these like badass AI drawings of her and shit. Could have covered that. I almost covered that. I almost covered the shooting in Minneapolis and then maybe followed up with some of the Scottish girl. But again, I already had all the information put up for the flag burning executive order. So we're going to cover that. So if you're interested in that topic, that's what we're going to be covering tonight. So, and then next week, we'll cover maybe some more of the Scottish girl, figure out a little bit more what's happening with her situation because there isn't a lot of information out there on her situation. It's mostly just people debating online on social media. So, I guess that wouldn't have been enough to cover a news story anyway. Same with the Minneapolis shooting. To anybody who's in Minneapolis who sees this, which they probably won't. I mean, nobody sees these things anyways. But to anybody who's in Minneapolis, if they do see that, I'm very sorry that's happening up there, you guys. And I hope I hope your community heals after that because it's pretty horrible. So we might cover that next week then when there's a little more information about the shooter. I know there's a lot of information already out there, but in a week the information will be a little bit more concrete, right? So we might cover that next week. But today we're just going to go with the less depressing stuff, and we're going to go with Trump's flag burning EO. All right, so let me get about my Twizzler stick. I came down here today, opened up my Twizzler stick bag, and I only have 3 Twizzler sticks. I was like, fuck, how many Twizzler sticks did my fat ass eat last time I was streaming? I need to go get more Twizzler sticks. I'm going to starve to death in the middle of this fucking stream. Okay, so this is why we're going to talk about it. Reuters here. Trump orders crackdown on U.S. flag burning and desecration, raising free speech concern. And that's where a big bulk of the debate is being had on the internet. How does this affect freedom of speech, right? That sort of thing. We're not going to read through the article. I'm just showing you that everybody's talking about it. If you haven't heard about it yet, even Fox News, Trump's flag burning order draws rare fire from conservatives. Let's see if they got any examples of conservatives throwing down over this in here. Colin Wright. Oh, yeah, he's been talking mad about this. We might look at his Twitter page because he's definitely been throwing down over this. Banning flag burning is absurd. It's anti-free speech and peak snowflake behavior. I would never burn the American flag because of what it symbolizes to me. But the act of banning the burning of it runs more contrary to American values than the burning itself ever could. Okay, so Colin Wright. Colin Wright's a Republican. Jesse Kelly. I don't know Jesse Kelly, but I'm assuming he's a Republican. That's what this article is about. I would never in a million years harm the American flag, but a president telling me I can't has me as close as I'll ever be to lighting one on fire. I am a free American citizen, and if I ever feel like torching one, I will. This is garbage. Okay. Strong words there. Donna Loesch? Loesch? I don't know who that is. Anybody knows who that is? Don't let me know because I don't really care. But Donna says flag burning is vile, but the government has no right to control speech or expression. Okay, and then Eric Erickson, that's an awesome name. I knew a Steven Stevenson once upon a time. So I feel like that's an even cooler name. This is actually not brilliant. Okay, so Gardiner Niall Gardner says this is brilliant from President Trump. If you burn the American flag and hate America, you should also leave America and live somewhere else. Eric Erickson, the dude with the awesome name, says this is actually not brilliant. While I agree with the sentiment, it is unfortunately well settled constitutional law that burning the flag is a matter of free speech and the executive does not get to create crimes. I think what he means to say there is the executive does not get to create laws, not crimes, because technically, you know, creating a crime. I mean, I don't know. It's just the wording there was a little bit odd to me, but that's his opinion there. And as far as the executive not getting to create new laws goes, from what I researched, that's 100% correct. The executive branch does not get to create new laws or alter existing laws from everything I read. Okay, so he would be correct on that. Bonchi says, I like that name. It's good. Eric Erickson's a little bit funner. I enjoy that one a little more. Bonchi says, I know nothing matters and you aren't allowed to criticize your own side. But I'd like to return to a time when presidents didn't sign unconstitutional executive orders for show. Okay, well, that's Bonchi right there is why you don't choose a side. Then you're free to criticize whoever you want. Because both sides do things. Kimberly Ross says, I don't think the federal government should take equity stakes in companies, and First Amendment protections apply to the burning of the American flag as much as I abhor that action. Yeah, right here, she's talking about Trump's son of a bitch. She's talking about Trump, the Trump admin, taking, I think, a 10% equity stake in Intel. That's what she's talking about there, which is another thing that I was going to talk about today, but I ended up having a whole lot for the flag burning stuff. So will I take it one at a time? I'll maybe do that one. If nothing new pops up with the Scottish girl or the Minneapolis shooter, then we will cover that for sure, because that is interesting. That's another thing that we might want to get into and actually read the actual facts regarding it, right? Because that's what we're doing with this flag burning thing. Right now, I'm just showing you even Republicans are pissed. I don't know any of these people. Kristen Mag. Oh, Christopher Rufo. He says, I'm sorry, as long as this is the status quo, I'm not going to work myself up into a state of hysteria about Trump's executive order on burning the American flag. And so he's pulling up two different articles here showing people getting time in prison for burning a pride flag and making skid marks on an LGBTQ Rainbow Road mural. Okay, so that's Christopher Rufo. I think it's Rufo, not Rufio. There's no I. Rufo's position. We'll get into his position a little later and we'll fact check this particular claim. We're going to do that a little bit later in the show. But there you have it. So it raises concerns about freedom of speech, and even amongst conservatives. Okay, even conservatives are going to bat and saying, yeah, I don't like this. Okay, so first thing I want to do before we read any articles on it, before we get into everybody else's opinions on it and all of that, let's just read it, okay? Because it's really short. This is it. This is it right here. This is the entire executive order right here. It's super fucking short. A little 5-year-old could read this shit, right? So let's go ahead and read this together. Prosecuting burning of the American flag. Executive orders, August 25th, 2025. How many days ago was that? That was 2 days ago. Wow, gosh, it seems like it was forever ago. I need to spend way less time on X. I feel like all my time is spent on X these last couple of days looking for all the newsworthy shit that's happening, and it feels like it's been 5 days since this happened. Okay. By the authority vested in me as the President of the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered, Section 1, Purpose. Our great American flag is the most sacred and cherished symbol of the United States of America and of American freedom, identity, and strength. I got no nose noises. Okay, over nearly 2.5 centuries, many thousands of American patriots have fought, bled, and died to keep the stars and stripes waving proudly. The American flag is a special symbol in our national life that should unite and represent all Americans of every background and walk of life. This is all good stuff. I like all this. That all sounds really awesome. I agree with every single bit of that. But let's continue. Desecrating it is uniquely offensive and provocative. Okay. It is a statement of contempt. I will note here, uh, just real quick, whether or not desecrating the flag is uniquely offensive and provocative is a subjective statement. That's not a fact. And I'm just stating that just to say, hey, some people don't find it particularly offensive or provocative. A lot of people, myself included, I would never burn an American flag. I would never buy an American flag to burn one. I never have burned one. I'd never be anywhere where people are burning them and be like, oh, hey, let me fucking help you with that. That's not my thing. I don't do that. I don't believe in it. I'm very happy about America. I'm happy that I live in America, and I'm very thankful to be here. And I'm very thankful. I mean, the flag represents that to me, so I wouldn't ever burn an American flag. But I wouldn't find it, whether or not it's provocative is very subjective. Like, I wouldn't find it so provocative that I would want to go hurt somebody. And that's important to note, right? If I saw somebody else burning the flag, I wouldn't feel like, oh, I should walk up and assault that person and risk going to prison over that. I wouldn't feel that way. So, and then provocative too, just because something's provocative, it also doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. But just wanted to point that out. Desecrating it is uniquely offensive and provocative. It is a statement of contempt, hostility, and violence against our nation. It could be. It could be. Again, that depends on the person who's burning it, what they're trying to do. The clearest possible expression of opposition to the political union that preserves our rights, liberty, and security. Okay. The clearest possible expression of opposition to the political union that preserves our rights, liberties, and security. It certainly could be. It isn't always, but it certainly could be. Burning this representation of America may incite violence and riot. It can. I mean, I feel like that statement is true. It may incite violence and riot. I think they missed an A or riots, an S there. American flag burning is also used by groups of foreign nationals as a calculated act to intimidate and threaten violence against Americans because of their nationality and place of birth. Okay. I can think of some times where I've seen that. Sure. Absolutely. I believe that that definitely happens. And I believe that there is a possibility that it incites violence and riots. There is a possibility. That doesn't mean it always does. But continue. Notwithstanding the Supreme Court's ruling on First Amendment protections. Notwithstanding the Supreme Court's rulings on First Amendment protections, the court has never held that American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action, or that is an action amounting to quote-unquote fighting words, is constitutionally protected. See Texas versus Johnson. Okay, so the Texas versus Johnson's decision in 1989 stated that it is legal, it is protected by the First Amendment to burn the flag. But what they're saying here is, notwithstanding that, okay, aside from that, the court has never held that the American flag desecration conducted in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action, or that it is an action amounting to fighting words, which is kind of the same thing. An action amounting to fighting words is an action that is likely to incite imminent lawless action. Okay, that's what fighting words is. Fighting words is the idea of fighting words in the Supreme Court in our legal system is walking up to somebody and saying something for the purpose of making them inflict violence on you, not necessarily somebody else, but making them fight. Realistically, I suppose it could count for inciting violence against somebody else, but I think that actually turns into incitement, not fighting words. Fighting words is a specific kind of incitement where you're saying something to somebody to get them to fight you, right? And it is not constitutionally protected, it says here. It says that's what they're saying right here, okay? The court has never held that American flag desecration that is conducted in a manner that would be likely to incite imminent lawless action, which would be the equivalent of a fighting words. They're essentially saying that's the equivalent of fighting words, and is not constitutionally protected. And they're saying, see the Texas and Johnson ruling for an example of that, or for rulings that express that, right? And we will look into that. I got Texas and Johnson, and then the only other ruling on flag burning that I could find, shitballs, where is it? No. Nope. 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 Fuck. Where are we at, son? Yo, here it is. United States versus Eichmann. We're going to read a little bit about that too so we can understand those court cases as well. But so they're saying go check out that court case and it'll show that even though it is 100% 100% protected by the First Amendment to burn a flag in general for the purpose of expression, it is not, they have never ruled that it is constitutionally protected to burn an American flag for the sake of fighting words, basically, for the sake of inciting eminent lawless action. Okay, so that's the distinction they're making. Well, we'll read up a little bit now so you can see for yourself. My administration will act to restore respect and sanctity to the American flag and prosecute those who incite violence or otherwise violate our laws while desecrating this symbol of our country to the fullest extent permissible under any available authority. So they will act to restore respect and sanctity of the flag and prosecute those who incite violence or otherwise violate our laws while desecrating this symbol of our country to the fullest extent possible. Okay, that's it. They are seeking to prosecute those who incite violence or otherwise violate our laws while desecrating the American flag. Okay, that's important to note. That wording is very important. Combined with the wording up here, they're not actually banning the burning of the American flag. They're banning burning the American flag for the purpose of inciting eminent lawless action or doing so while inciting violence or violating other laws. Okay, so let's continue. Section 2, measures to combat desecration of the American flag. So this is what the EO actually does. We read why they created the executive order. This is what the executive order is actually about, right? Okay. The Attorney General shall prioritize the enforcement to the fullest extent possible of our nation's criminal and civil laws against acts of American flag desecration that violate applicable content-neutral laws while causing harm unrelated to expression, consistent with the First Amendment. Okay, so there you go. That pulls it out a little bit more. The Attorney General shall prioritize the enforcement, yada, 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 against acts of American flag desecration that violate applicable content-neutral laws while causing harm unrelated to expression. Okay, so if it is for the sake of expression, that's protected by the First Amendment, consistent with First Amendment, that's what that means. If the American flag desecration violates applicable content-neutral laws while causing harm, that is what they're going after. Okay, hold on. Hey, what's going on, Razor? How you doing today, man? Nice to see you in here. Hope you're having a good day at work today. Hope you're having a good week with your cousin, too, by the way, man. Ain't you and your cousin hanging out this week? Hope you guys are having a good time. Yeah. Talked about that in the last week, I think. You with your cousin? Yeah. Right? I think so. Wasn't that Monday? Yeah, Monday. So, yeah, man, you guys having a good time or what? Hanging out? I'm looking up the definition of content neutral law. Content neutral refers to laws that apply to all expression without regard to the substance or message of the expression. Okay, since content neutral, it doesn't matter what the substance of the expression is, this law applies to all forms of expression. So let's go back here. American flag desecration that violates applicable content neutral laws while causing harm. Okay, so if you're violating those laws that are held against all forms of expression, regardless of the kind of expression, and they cause harm, your actions cause harm and violate those content neutral laws and or cause harm, then there's an issue here. Okay. This may include, but is not limited to, violent crimes, hate crimes, illegal discrimination against American citizens, or other violations of Americans' civil rights, and crimes against property and the peace, as well as conspiracies and attempts to violate and aiding and abetting others to violate such laws. Okay, so that's a big chunk of information right there, but this is some of the things. Again, it's including but not limited to violent crimes. So if you are, these laws that they're talking about, if you are breaking any laws, if you are desecrating the American flag while breaking any of these following laws, they're going to charge you with a essentially American flag desecration or whatever they're calling it. Okay, so if you desecrate the American flag while committing a violent crime, a hate crime, a crime of discrimination, or any other violation of civil rights, a crime against property or the peace, as well as conspiracies and attempts to violate and aiding and abetting others to violate such laws. Okay, so if you break any of these laws or you are helping others break those laws while burning the American flag, we're going to arrest you for burning the American flag. So that is what they're saying. That sounds silly because it's like, well, you're already arresting, hopefully you're arresting them for these other crimes. Yes. Hopefully if somebody's committing a violent crime, you're just fucking arresting them for that. Because violent crime, it's a crime and it's violent, and we don't want people committing violent crimes on our streets. Yeah. So hopefully you're arresting people just for that. And why would you need to arrest them for the American flag, burning the American flag, if they're already committing a violent crime? Well, I suppose we could get to that a little later in the stream, but I'll explain it right now and then I'll show you the actual proof of that later in the stream. What this is essentially a force multiplier. Okay. So it's the exact same rules as hate crimes. It's very much the same concept. It's not exact same, but it's very much the same concept that's working behind it. Okay. So if you punch somebody in the face in America, that's assault. And we're going to make up a number. We're going to say that gets you 3 years in prison. Okay. I don't know if that's normal for assault, but 3, I don't think it is. But, it depends on how bad the assault is. I'd imagine if you've done it before. But we're going to give you 3 years in prison for assault. Okay, if you assaulted somebody, if you punched somebody in the face while shouting a racial slur at them, now you get charged with assault plus a hate crime. And that hate crime is used as a force multiplier to make those 3 years turn into 6 years or 9 years or 12 years. Okay, now it makes the punishment even bigger. Okay, because it has that. That's why I'm saying force multiplier. That's not an actual legal term. For those who didn't know, I think that's like in video games or Dragon Ball Z. But that's essentially what it is. And that's what this is. It's being used in the exact same way. If you commit a violent crime, you punch somebody in the face, you're going to get your 3 years for assault. If you do it after burning the American flag, we're going to add a force multiplier, and those 3 years are going to turn into 6 years and 9 years and 12 years. Oh, did we talk about this a week earlier? I don't know about not the burning of the American flag. That wasn't me. Last week, I actually didn't have a news stream last week, and I didn't. Oh, you know what? I think you're thinking of is the other executive order on video games. I did do a stream on that, but haven't done a stream on the executive order yet. Not this executive order. I've done a stream on 2 other executive orders, so that might be what you're talking about. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know what he said about Israel. He could have contradictory statements on Israel for sure. I have absolutely no idea, to be honest with you, man. But yeah, as far as that goes, if like what you're saying, if he considers people anti-Semitic for talking shit on Israel, then yeah, then him saying, oh, he also believes in freedom of expression would be contradictory for sure. But yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I'm not really sure. I haven't done a lot of research into what Trump has said about Israel. You know what I mean? Or what specific laws we have regarding people talking about Israel. A lot of people were talking things about you can't burn the Israeli flag in America. A lot of people were saying that on X. And I did do some research. We're going to get into it, but that's definitely not true. Like, you absolutely can burn the Israeli flag in America. I looked it up, and there's absolutely 0 laws on that. So there was a lot of people on X saying that, but that's all I've actually heard in regards to, like, laws about speaking against Israel. That would be interesting for another Newsweek Wednesday, though. I'll actually keep that. You know what? Hold on. Let me just write it down, because if I have a slow week, that would actually be an interesting topic to cover. What the exact laws are regarding Israel. Give me a second. Okay. Hold on. Write that down, because that would be fun to talk about at a later date. That would be really awesome. So I appreciate you bringing it up, because that might be a really good stream later on in the future. So, damn it, I didn't mean to do that. Now I got to fucking chew my Twizzler stick. One moment. It's a delicious Twizzler stick, so I'm going to take my time. Ah. Okay. So, yeah. Basically, this is being used as a force multiplier, right? If you do something bad while burning the American flag, we're going to make it even worse for you. Same as hate crimes in America. If you call somebody a slur while committing a crime, it's going to up it to a hate crime, and that makes it even worse, okay? Hold on, I got nose noises. Okay, let's move on. That was Section A. Section 2, Part A. This is Part B. In cases where the Department of Justice or another executive department or agency determines that an instance of American flag desecration may violate an applicable state or local law, such as an open burning restriction, okay, disorderly conduct laws, or destruction of property laws, okay, that would be like burning someone else's flag. You can't do that. The agency shall refer the matter to the appropriate state or local authority for potential action. Okay, for potential action. That doesn't mean they're automatically going to throw this force multiplier on you, but this opens it up a little bit now. Okay, now you see where there is other things that you could do, okay, that are a little bit, they are not even misdemeanors, open burning restrictions. If you violate an open burning restriction, I mean, I imagine that's a misdemeanor. That's a very small misdemeanor. Disorderly conduct, depending on what it is you're doing, that would be a misdemeanor. And destruction of property, if it's, I know if it's property less than $1,000, I think it depends on the state, actually, if I believe. And, but if you're doing any of that and those are misdemeanors and you burning the American flag while you were doing that, then you still get this false multiplier. So now we're getting into a lot of different laws. And so you could see something, for example, like open burning restrictions. Well, depending on what those are, it might not be okay for you to burn an American flag anywhere, you know? I mean, you can't go light a fire in the middle of Walmart. That's going to result in some kind of a crime. Yeah. And that now, if you're burning a flag in the middle of Walmart, it's going to be even more time, you see? So we might get in this right here, you know, and disorderly conduct is burning the flag. You know, if you're inciting a riot, wouldn't that be considered disorderly conduct? I mean, it's a different charge, but couldn't you say, like, well, he's lighting the flag and that's potentially inciting a riot, therefore this is disorderly conduct? Bam. You know, so we're adding a little extra things. For the record, destruction of property, you can never burn other people's flags. That was never a thing. You can never take somebody else's flag and burn it. That's not the case here in America. So that's not legal, or never has been anyways. Mm. Fucking Norton always pops up in the most, god damn it. Mm. Oh, sure. Well, I mean, yeah, no, like if that is Trump's position, like it's anti-Semitic for you to talk about what Israel is doing in Palestine, then, and he's saying that that makes you anti-Semitic, then no, I don't think it makes you anti-Semitic. If you're just talking about what's happening, the actual war in Palestine, I don't think that makes you anti-Semitic just because you're saying, I don't know, whatever you're saying. Like if you're saying like, oh, I disagree with what Israel is doing in Palestine, I don't think that's anti-Semitic. No. And if Trump has said it makes you anti-Semitic, then he's absolutely wrong for sure. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Yeah, like that's not even remotely anti-Semitic, or at least in my opinion. You know, I mean, if you were to say something like, you know, something derogatory specifically about Jewish people, like, oh, Jewish people always do this horrible thing, or they're all this kind of horrible person, then I would say, well, that's anti-Semitic. But just talking about Israel isn't the same thing as just talking about Jewish people. You know what I mean? Or at least that's how I split the difference. You know, but if Trump is saying that, then yeah, that's totally nonsensical and is contradictory for certain. Yeah. So I agree with that. Okay. Do. So what we got going on here is, and again, just want to reiterate before we move to the next point. They're just saying the agency who catches you doing one of these things, if you are burning an American flag and violating a local or state law, such as an open burning restriction, disorderly conduct, destruction of property laws, state laws, local laws, then the agency shall refer the matter to the appropriate authority and possibly charge you with American flag desecration or whatever the charge is going to be, right? C, to the maximum extent permitted by the Constitution, the Attorney General shall vigorously prosecute those who violate our laws in ways that involve desecrating the American flag and may pursue litigation to clarify the scope of the First Amendment exceptions in this area. Okay, so again, that all right there, violate, vigorously prosecute. Son of a fucking bitch. Damn it. What just happened? I have a whole bunch of software that's trying to do updates right in the middle of the stream. Okay, it worked. It was fine. Okay, gosh. But, anyways, so these fucking PCs, man, they do like 15 updates a day. I swear to God. It's not that much. I'm being, what's the word, hyperbolic, but I'm doing it because I'm annoyed. So, anyways, we all get this. Vigorously prosecute those who violate our laws in ways that involve desecrating the American flag. We went over that. That's the Attorney General's going to be doing that now. And again, we know what those laws, some of them are at least, again, up here, it includes but not limited to, and then he gave us a list. So we know what some of them are. And may pursue litigation to clarify the scope of the First Amendment exceptions in this area. Now, essentially, my reading on that just means that they can go ahead and charge people. They're going to be liberal, I guess, with how they charge people in regards to burning the flag. And hold on a second. Got nose noises. Okay, so I'm assuming what this means is that they're going to be liberal with who they charge with these flag desecration for the sake of pursuing litigation, for the sake of clarifying the scope of the First Amendment exceptions in this area. So essentially, they're going to pursue any litigation that makes it, well, I guess it's kind of self-explanatory, clarifies what the First Amendment actually states in regards to flag burning, which technically that by itself, that statement, I don't think is bad at all. It depends on what that litigation is that they pursue, but ultimately that's not a bad thing to do, right? Clarifying the Constitution, clarifying laws, laws only really work well when they're as clear as humanly possible. You can't have, sometimes you have to have laws with a gray area because it's a necessity. It just is what it is. Some laws do have to be interpreted by the court or a judge, but ultimately you want your laws to be as clear, cut, and dry as possible because it makes it easier to follow. Clear instructions are easier to follow than unclear instructions. You see what I'm saying? So clarifying the First Amendment, I don't think that's a bad deal at all. I like the sound of that. Okay. D, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, acting within their respective authorities, shall deny, prohibit, terminate, or revoke visas, residence permits, naturalization proceedings, and other immigration benefits, or seek removal from the United States pursuant to federal law, including blah, 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 there's the federal laws, whenever there has been an appropriate determination that foreign nationals have engaged in American flag desecration activity under circumstances that permit the exercise of such remedies pursuant to law. Okay, which would mean, so what this essentially means is if they find anybody who is a foreign national who's burning the flag at this capacity, right, while committing other crimes, more or less, then they don't just charge you with the crime and you go to jail. They will prohibit, terminate, or revoke visas, resident permits. They're essentially anything that they can take away from you as far as residency goes, they're going to do it. So they're going to absolutely take away any citizenship or a pathway to citizenship or anything if they catch you burning an American flag while committing another crime. Okay? So that's what that in general means to me, right? Section 3, severability. We're just going to go real quick because that general provisions is the basic. Nothing in here is really important. That Section 4 general provisions is always attached to the executive orders. Severability, if any provision of this order or the application of any provision to any person or circumstance is held to be invalid, the remainder of this order and the applications of its provisions to any other persons or circumstances shall not be affected thereby. So basically, if any specific aspect of this executive order is held to be invalid, I'm assuming that means like the Supreme Court ruled some aspect of this executive order is not constitutional. That doesn't mean the whole executive order is thrown out the window. You're not taking the baby with the bathwater. It's just that specific part of it. And so That's what that means, okay? And nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect the authority granted by the law, the functions of the director. The order shall be implemented and consistent with the applicable laws. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit substantive. Here we go. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States. Oh, never mind. They always put that disclaimer in there. I thought we had something else. So, okay, that's the actual executive order, right? So, what is that? Annie Knoll? Annie Knoll 255. Well, thanks for tuning into the show. I'm glad that you like it. And yeah, absolutely. Herbert the 0205. Yeah, I'll hit you up on Discord after this. I appreciate you. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. If that all happened, Razor, then I mean I don't know what to tell you, to be honest. Um I mean, I get that, like the whole Israel Palestine thing, you're very passionate about it. And if Trump did all that, like, is stopping people from prosecuting a war criminal, then that sounds pretty bad. But I don't know enough about it to have a conversation about it. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know. I haven't done any research into that. The Israel Palestine thing, because I'm not a very religious person in general, was never a one, because I'm not religious, and two, because there's so much information involved. It was never something that I put a lot of research into. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know a lot about it. One, I'm very far removed from it, but there's so much history there that you have to read through that they just don't teach us in America. You know what I mean? They don't teach us about Palestine and Israel and how the fighting started or when it started or all that. We don't learn about that. You have to go to a specific school to learn about that here. So, it was just not something that I know a lot about. So, it's not something that I can really have a conversation about just because the chances are that I'm not going to know what you're talking about, You're going to say things now. It's it's more like when you're telling me about your religion. When you're telling me your religion, I'm always excited to hear about your religion, but it's because I know nothing about it. You see what I'm saying? Like, I can't have a conversation with you on, like, oh yeah, well, that's the correct way to do things, or no, I don't know if it works this way, because it's like, well, I don't know, man. Like, you tell me how it works and I take your word for it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know enough about that to have a full-blown conversation on it. You know what I mean? So well, I don't know if I don't think it's stupid. I don't think anything you're saying is stupid. Like, don't, and for the record, you're very passionate about it. You can't ever let anybody tell you that it's stupid for you to be passionate about the things you're passionate about, particularly this. You're much closer to that whole conflict than I am. So it makes a lot of sense for you to have very passionate views about it. You know what I'm saying? Particularly because Muslims in that area are very highly affected. And that's people that share your religion. Yeah. So that makes a lot of fucking sense that you would be passionate about it, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's not even remotely stupid. That totally makes sense. And that's very logical for you to have that position. Absolutely. And very logical for you to have strong opinions about it. If I was in your shoes, I guarantee you I fucking would too, 100%. So it's definitely not stupid. Not at all. I don't think it's stupid at all. It's more, uh, for me, it's not that it's stupid. What's the word that I'm looking for here? Well, the reality is just that I don't have a lot of, what's the word? Not wisdom, education in this matter. That's what it ultimately is. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, no, if he's a war criminal and has an arrest warrant issued for him, then yeah, I have no idea why he hasn't been arrested. But again, see, like, I wasn't even aware that he was an international war criminal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know that even happens. So, you know, I couldn't tell you why he hasn't been arrested yet then neither, because I didn't even know that was a thing. So, but yeah, I mean, if he's a war criminal and that's officially been like international law says, and they've declared him a war criminal, then yeah, they should probably arrest him, like, because it's very, very bad to be a war criminal. Absolutely, 100%. You don't want more war criminals in the world. Okay, I don't care what religion they are. Any war criminals of any religion or from any country. I don't want my American leaders to be fucking war criminals, you know? And we have some. We do. Like, you know, I think a lot of Americans don't like to admit that, but we have leaders in this country that are war criminals and they got away with it. And it's pretty sad and it's fucked up and it shouldn't be that way. We don't want war criminals in any country, you know, including America, especially America because of just how fucking big it is. You know what I'm saying? So it is definitely a thing. So I absolutely agree with you there. If he's a war criminal, then Netanyahu definitely needs to be arrested, you know, for certain. So, but I just, again, I don't know if I've never heard that this happened. And that doesn't mean it didn't happen. I've just never looked into it, you know, is all I'm saying. I just don't know enough about it because I've never read about it. That's all it is. So, um, okay. So let's see. We did severability. We did that. So that's the whole executive order right there, right? Pretty short, pretty sweet. And it's important to note because we have a lot of people, and I don't know if we can, yeah, we might hop into it just to see. Is it gonna, okay. So we have a lot of people who are of the opinion that this means you can't burn the American flag at all, is what they think this is saying. Here, I'm going to open this new link and bring you over here. I don't mean to call this guy out, but this poor guy has been going through it. I don't know who Rattler Innovations is. Okay, if somebody from that company is watching, you know, I'm not trying to pick on you guys. Looks like it's a gun company. You guys might make perfectly fine stuff for guns. I have no idea. But here's a video. And Rattler says, not only does our company believe in the Second Amendment, but we also believe in freedom of expression protected by the First Amendment. Notice the video. It's the burning of the flag in the video. He's got a small little American flag and he's lighting it on fire. We love the United States. There is no other place in the world that shares the liberties that we cherish here on a daily basis. Our products revolve around a concept that in many other nations is completely abolished for civilian ownership. A nation of freedom is what we have strived. And again, that's why I assume that they sell gun parts there. A nation of freedom is what we have strived to be since conception, and a free nation should recognize that burning of any flag is a protected form of speech. Okay, so then this is in response to this. Now, you know, I'm not going to go through and because this poor guy is getting eaten alive in a lot of his comment sections, and I gave him a little heart here because I ended up leaving a reply to him, and whenever I reply to anybody, I'll give him a little bit of a heart, say, "Yay, man, you know, you said something interesting that I responded to, so here's a like." But he is incorrect. What he's doing right here in protest of this executive order is still legal. He's just burning his own flag. Assuming he bought that himself, which I'm assuming he did. I don't think this guy is a thief or, you know, there's nothing that would make me assume this dude's a thief. Seems like he's got a successful gun business. But what he's ultimately doing here is still perfectly legal. Okay, and I don't know if he knows that, but I'm just using this to illustrate that there's a lot of people who don't. A lot of people who don't realize that the executive order doesn't actually make it illegal to burn the American flag. It makes it illegal to do so while committing other crimes. You see what I'm saying? Oh, hold on. Nose noises. Yeah, man, that's all pretty fucked up. Like, that's a lot of people, and that totally sucks. Like, again, I don't know a lot about it, but if that's the case, man, that's totally shitty. It really is. And yeah, I mean, I would imagine, to be perfectly honest, international law or international human rights, it does tend to go out the window a lot, actually. And it's very sad and unfortunate, but there's numerous wars where people have absolutely broken international law and nothing ever happened to him. You know, the guy that just was recently searched here in America, a man named John Bolton. A lot of Americans consider him a war criminal whose actions resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of people. Okay. And Americans for a long time have wanted him, some Americans, not all, a lot of Americans, myself included, at least want him investigated because we feel like he broke international law and is a war criminal, and we want to see him prosecuted. And they just did that this last week. That just happened, and he has been doing that for decades. You know what I'm saying? So no, I mean that could be. It could be, yeah. I mean that it could be that, or they're just so far removed from the issue that they don't care. But whatever the reason is, yeah, no, it definitely sucks, and it's very unfortunate fact of the world that international laws are regularly broken and people don't care. It sucks. It really does. But it does happen. It is unfortunate. International laws do protect some people, but a lot of times they're shrugged off. It does happen. So, okay, fact check. President Donald Trump protects the American flag from desecration. So this was released from the White House as soon as the executive order was, and it just kind of runs down. Hopefully we'll see. I haven't read this, but it kind of gives you a brief idea of what the order was designed to do. We're just reading this to make sure that what the White House is saying stays consistent. Yeah. So, combating flag desecration. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order to restore respect, pride, and sanctity to the American flag and prosecute those who desecrate this symbol of our freedom, identity, and strength to the fullest extent permissible. 3 bullet points here. The order directs the Attorney General to vigorously prosecute those who violate our laws in ways that involve desecrating the flag, and to pursue litigation to clarify the scope of the First Amendment in this area. So they did very clearly state that in the executive order. 2, it also instructs the Attorney General to refer flag desecration cases that violate state or local laws to appropriate state and local authorities. It said that. And finally, the order directs the Secretaries of State and Homeland Security and the Attorney General, this is concerning the immigrants, to deny, prohibit, terminate, or revoke visas, permits, naturalization proceedings, and other immigration benefits, or seek the removal from the United States wherever there has been an appropriate determination that flag desecration by foreign nationals permits the exercise of those remedies under applicable law. Okay, so all right, that's what it did. They put it down pretty good right there. That's exactly what it did. Restoring respect for the flag. The American flag is the most sacred and cherished symbol of the U.S., and desecrating it is uniquely and inherently offensive and provocative. Again, that is subjective. That's not a factual statement. It is a statement of contempt and hostility toward our nation. It can be, but again, it isn't always. We just saw Rattler. Oh, I already took his thing off. Rattler LLC is an American company that I'm assuming makes guns. They seem to love the ever-living shit out of America, and you saw a video of them burning the flag. Yes. And that certainly was not to illustrate contempt and hostility towards America, or at least I certainly don't think so. That we just looked at his tweet and he didn't say anything about hating or having contempt for America. Yeah, so that's proof. We just saw the proof that that isn't always the case. We had a proof right there of a Constitution-loving, Second Amendment gun dude, and he burnt the flag, and it didn't have nothing to do with contempt and hostility towards our nation. So it is a statement of contempt and hostility toward our nation and an act used by groups of foreign nationals calculated to intimidate and threaten violence against Americans. Okay, that last bit, it can be, yes. It absolutely has been used as an act by groups of foreign nationals to calculated to intimidate and threaten violence against Americans. Yes, that has been done before, certainly. It isn't every time, but it absolutely has been done. Okay, more nose noises. Sorry, you guys. Just got stuffy nose, I guess. I don't know. What are you doing, computer? Okay, 3 points here. Recent protests, including those in LA in June 2025, have featured flag burning alongside of violent acts and other conduct threatening public safety. That right there would be the reason, I would imagine, why they're doing this, is because of the recent riots in Los Angeles, the anti-ICE riots. There was absolutely American flag burning at those riots. And I don't know if they're happening alongside violent acts, but they very well could happen. Yeah, because they were burning cars in some instances. Not every protester was, okay? I'm not saying every protester was, but they absolutely were. There was protesters that were burning fucking cars, okay? They were throwing bricks at people who were just driving the fuck by them. And so I'm going to throw down on this, okay? If you're throwing bricks at random people driving by, if you're burning cars in the middle of the street, then yeah, I don't give a fuck if they string your ass up. I really don't give a shit. Like, I really don't. You're a fucking cretin to society. You're a piece of shit. You're throwing bricks at random innocent people. You're a fucking scumbag. And I don't give a shit what anybody does to you at that point. You know, I don't care if the person pulls their car over, pulls a gun out and shoots you in your fucking face. I really don't give a shit. I'm gonna say, well, that sucks. One less asshole in the world. One less jerk off who thinks he can throw bricks at innocent fucking people because that's somehow a protest. And honestly, any intelligent person at those protests should be thinking the same thing. They should be thinking, yeah, get this asshole out of here. What the hell is he doing? Like, somebody throw a brick at his fucking head and make him stop doing this because he's making the protest look bad. You see what I'm saying? So no patience for these assholes. And if they're using, which they are, they're going to use flag desecration when people do that sort of thing to add that force multiplier to their sentence. Well, in that instance of this, I really don't give a shit. 100%. I don't care even a tiny bit. Not even a little, like the little, like that fucking much. I don't even care like that fucking much. Go fuck yourself. You're a shitty person. Okay. So number 2, such conduct disrespects the sacrifices of Americans who bled for our country and undermines the flag as a symbol that unites and represents all Americans of every background and walk of life. Okay. Yeah, to some extent it does. Yeah, absolutely. It certainly does. Okay. But disrespecting people, even if it is brave soldiers who did sacrifice their life for our country, as heinous as that might sound, disrespect is not illegal. Okay. And they're not saying that it is. They're just saying like they don't like it because it disrespects them. But ultimately, the EO did not say, we're arresting you for disrespecting our troops. The EO says, if you're committing any crime in conjunction with burning the flag, then we're going to arrest you, and then we're going to add that force multiplier on and really screw you is what we're going to do, right? So, third point, the Supreme Court has never held that flag desecration conduct in a manner that is likely to incite imminent lawless action or serve as a form of fighting words is constitutionally protected. And we might get into that here. Boop-a-doop-a-doop-boo. Yeah, we're actually going to get into that here very shortly. Okay, we're going to see if that's the case. That's the claim they're making. The Supreme Court has never held that flag desecration for the purpose of inciting imminent lawless action, aka fighting words, is constitutionally protected. We're going to look into that and we'll see. We'll see. They could be right. They could be wrong. I don't know yet. We're going to check it out. Okay. Upholding American pride. President Trump has championed policies to restore pride in the American flag and the nation's history, reinforcing the values that unite the country. President Trump banned flying any other flags besides the Stars and Stripes at State Department facilities around the world. I think that's 100% based, by the way. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. You only fly the American flag at our state departments. Any government building, local government, state government, federal government, no. It's the country's flag, no other flag. Or state flags, okay? If you want to fly your California flag, your Tennessee flag, whatever, you do that. But the only flags are state and American flags. He signed an executive order to protect America's monuments from vandalism. He launched initiatives like the Great American State Fair. This is all the other shit he's done. Issued an executive order to ensure the Smithsonian Institute museums accurately celebrate American exceptionalism. Oh, that's right. I was going to do an episode on that too, because a lot of people were pissed about that. I got to write that one down too. Hold on. Got to give me a sec. There's too much going on in the world. Too much good shit to talk about and learn about. So, Smithsonian exhibits. Yeah, we're going to look into that and research that because that was another thing Trump did. And interesting. So anyways, yeah, that's just going through how much America or Trump loves the American flag, right? So that's all that was really saying. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, again, I don't know about any of that stuff, man. That it's you got to kind of take it from my perspective here. I don't really know anything about it, and that all absolutely sounds horrible. But I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what Balfour's promise is. You know what I mean? Like that's how little I know about this situation. You know what I'm saying? I wish I could have a better conversation with you about it, and um, actually talk about these things. But like stuff like that, like I have no idea what that even is. You know what I mean? So it just leaves me at a place where all I can really do, because I can't disagree with you on any of this because I don't know anything about any of this, you know what I'm saying? So all I can really do is like nod my head and say, yeah, you're right, but that's about it. That's all I can really do, you know? Um, so it's just kind of like I'm at a loss for words with it. Like that all sounds absolutely horrible. I just don't know, anything about it other than that. That sounds really bad. And if all that's true, then absolutely that's a big problem. But that's just that's all I know, you know what I mean? It was about the promised land of Israel and they chose Palestine. And again, like I'm the Balfour Declaration was about the promised land of Israel and they chose Palestine. Um again, I'm not what do you mean? Who chose Palestine? And what about the promised land of Israel? Like, what did it say about the promised land of Israel? That it wasn't supposed to go to the Jews or was it supposed to go to Palestine? You see what I mean? Like, this topic, it would almost be, pick a topic that you know nothing about, and then that's where I'm at. You see what I'm saying? So, like, if you wanted to pick a topic, pick any topic that you don't know. Ah, because of their troubles. Okay. Well, I mean, so Europe made that promise to them, is what they did basically. They made the Balfour Declaration or Ballflower Declaration, however you pronounce that. Um, yeah, okay. Well, yeah. So again, I'm just kind of trusting that that's all correct. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean that sounds bad, but I don't know. I don't have much else to say about it. You know what I'm saying? So it definitely sucks. What you're describing sounds like it's absolutely a shitty deal for the Palestinians, but I just don't know. You know, that's what it is. And there's so much that I don't know about the topic. It would almost be like we would have to sit and read an entire book on it. You know what I mean? And it's just like anything else in the world. There's things that I know about that you don't know about because you're not interested in it, because it doesn't affect you. You know what I mean? Like this, you might not be interested at all in this executive order because this doesn't affect you guys in Saudi Arabia. It has nothing to do with your country. So you don't care about any of this. You know what I mean? I care about this because I live in this country. You know what I mean? Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, okay, I see it. Well, yeah, I mean, that sounds like a problem. Yeah. So that's a bummer. Um, anyway, so flag burning incident near White House leads to arrest hours after Trump's executive order. Okay, so this is the very next day, right? Very next day, we immediately have. Oh no, this is the same day. This is the exact same day that this executive order happens. We have somebody who, a combat veteran, that said he was burning the American flag in protest of an executive order Trump signed Monday targeting flag burning. So he was arrested for burning a flag on the White House property. So already it's leading into arrest. So if anybody tells you this isn't going to result in anything, it already has. It already has resulted in at least one arrest the day of, So, okay, Washington, this is generally what happened here. We're just going to run through it real quick. Federal authorities Monday arrested a man across the street from the White House after he set an American flag on fire the day Donald Trump signed an executive order intended to crack down on flag burning. The man, who identified himself as a 20-year-old combat veteran, a 20-year combat veteran, excuse me. Wow, 20-year combat veteran. Holy shit. In a video posted to social media by the news outlet The Bulwark, said, "I'm burning this flag as a protest to that illegal fascist president that sits in the White House," as he pointed to the White House from Lafayette Square. Secret Service sent a statement that it detained the man around 6:15 for igniting an object and that he was turned over to U.S. Park Police. U.S. Park Police said they arrested the man for violating a statute that prohibits lighting a fire in a public park. Okay, so there it is. This is exactly what I'm talking about with the force multiplier. this guy's inaction here, and why the force multiplier could potentially be a bad thing. Okay, so we don't know if this guy is getting charged with flag burning. We don't know. This would be interesting to look into, though. How the police, what's the word I'm looking for? How they handle this situation will be very interesting because it's going to show us exactly what the end results of this executive order are going to be. You see what I'm saying? So if he gets charged with burning the flag, flag desecration, then I would imagine that's actually a bit of a problem because, right, they explicitly said burning the flag for the purpose of inciting a riot or inciting violence, which he was not doing. He very clearly stated, I'm burning this flag as protest, which is expression, freedom of expression. He says it right there. But what he did technically still falls under the purview of the executive order because he burnt the flag while committing another crime. And the crime he committed was, where was it? Igniting an object. No. Okay, where is it? Violating a statute that prohibits lighting a fire in a public park. Okay, so this is how the EO could be used. You burn the flag. Oh, you lit a fire in a public park. Now, you would have gotten a fine for that. Now, you're going to get 5 years in prison because you're also burning the flag as you did it. See what I'm saying here? That force multiplier. That could end up happening to this guy because that's exactly what we just read. The executive order explicitly states burning a flag while committing any other crime. Okay? That's exactly what this guy did. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens to this man. Did we get a name for this dude? No, they didn't. Okay, hold on. We got a link, though. And this is just the bulwark. This isn't... Okay, well, let's bookmark this and see what ends up happening. We'll get back to that a little later. But ultimately, yeah. So if this guy ends up going to prison over this, then you can see how this EO, it's not being just used for inciting violence. You see what I'm saying? This guy was very clearly just protesting, and he should have gotten arrested for violating the statute of lighting fires in a public park. You can't do that, and that's illegal. Doesn't matter if you're protesting or not. You can't do that. So he should get arrested for that and fined or whatever the punishment is for that. Okay, but if he ends up getting way more than that because of the burning of the flag, then it's like, ooh, that makes me a little bit nervous. That makes me a little bit nervous about this whole thing, right? You know what I'm saying? Hmm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it sounds like you know a whole lot about it, Razor. Sounds like you know a whole lot about the conflict and what started it and all that. Um, and yeah, you got some very strong opinions on it. And, again, I have no idea about the Jews of today or several ethnicities from around the world. I mean, that could be, I don't know if that's true or not. I have no idea, to be honest with you. But yeah, so, I mean, I totally get it, man, for sure. Absolutely. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out because this would tell us if this executive order is the real deal. If they don't, if this guy ends up just getting charged for lighting a fire in a public park, then that's okay. Whatever. No big deal. No big deal. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, they're clearly respecting freedom of expression, right? But if he doesn't, he ends up getting that force multiplier, then this executive order was specifically designed for that. And in this case, it would be trampling on his First Amendment rights, which they said they weren't going to do, right? So here's a little summary that gave us a couple different cases on flag burning in the United States. Texas versus Johnson was the first one, and United States versus Eichmann. So Texas versus Johnson happened in 1989. Excuse me, sorry. I try to hit the mute button when I burp. but it just didn't happen that time. So, and then United States versus Eichmann happened in 1990. So we're going to read a little bit about Texas versus Johnson. What did they say? Because remember, the executive order references Texas versus Johnson and explicitly stating that the Supreme Court has never ruled that you can burn the flag to incite imminent lawless action. That is not protected speech. So let's see if it is. And they cite this ruling and say, see this ruling. Okay, well, let's see this ruling. We're going to do that. Yeah. Oh, sure. That's definitely a double standard. If you can't support Palestine somewhere, but you can support Israel, like, yeah, that's definitely a double standard. Absolutely agree with that. You should be able to support both of them or not support either of them if you don't want, you know? Absolutely. I definitely agree with that, man, for certain. So, Texas versus Johnson. Facts. Gregory Lee Johnson burned an American flag outside of the convention center where the 1984 Republican National Convention was being held in Dallas, Texas. Johnson burned the flag to protest the policies of President Ronald Reagan. He was arrested and charged with violating a Texas statute that prevented the desecration of a venerated object, including the American flag, if such action were likely to incite angers in others. Okay, so there's a thing. Interesting. So that's the exact same thing Trump is saying. The statute in Texas prevents the desecration of the American flag or other venerated objects, but the American flag, if, God damn it, cough, if the action were likely to incite anger. Okay, that's inciting violence. Yeah, inciting imminent lawless action. Right. Well, I guess that's not the right thing. Hold on. No, if it were likely to incite anger in others. That's, never mind. Sorry, let me back up. That inciting anger is not the same thing as inciting imminent lawless action. Okay. Once I said it out loud, I was like, Jesus, that was fucking stupid. Why did I say that? We all have brain farts. That was a brain fart. All right. Not the same thing. Okay. So they are explicitly, this Texas statute is saying, if it angers other people for you to burn the American flag, then you can't do it. Okay, so definitely in violation of the First Amendment, right? First Amendment protects your ability to anger other people if you want, with words or whatever, or a demonstration such as this, yeah. A Texas court tried and convicted Johnson. He appealed, arguing that his actions were symbolic speech protected by the First Amendment. The Supreme Court agreed to hear his case. The issue was whether flag burning constitutes symbolic speech protected by the First Amendment. The ruling, yes, it does. So they ruled against that, and they ruled in favor of Johnson. Okay, the majority of the court, according to Justice William Brennan, agreed with Johnson and held that flag burning constitutes a form of symbolic speech that is protected by the First Amendment. The majority noted that freedom of speech, and by the way, it was a majority reasoning 5-4. Okay. The majority noted that freedom of speech protects actions that society may find very offensive, but society's outrage alone is not justification for suppressing freedom of speech. Based. Very based. 100% based. Absolutely based. That little bit right there, 100% based. Absolutely agree with that. Just because you find something offensive does not mean we need to shut it down. We shut things down when they are harmful, not offensive. Not the same thing. In particular, the majority noted that the Texas law discriminated upon viewpoints. Example here, or what they, IE. What the fuck does IE mean? Is it an example? No, that's EG. Hold on. I know that seems like a silly thing to have to, but I'm going to do it just so I know. That is stands for the Latin phrase id est, which translates to that is, or in other words. That's it. Thank you. In other words. Okay, that's what I knew I'd read that before, but okay. So, in particular, the majority noted that the Texas law discriminated upon viewpoint. In other words, because we can speak Latin now, although the law punished actions such as flag burning that might arouse anger in others, it specifically exempted from prosecution actions that were respectful of venerated objects. For example, e.g. means example, burning and bearing a worn out flag. The majority said that the government could not discriminate in this manner based solely upon viewpoint. Okay, so they're saying, wait, your law is saying that it's okay to burn the flag if it's worn a flag, which, by the way, that is a thing. Here, guidelines for retiring American flags. This is a thing. To retire an American flag, respectfully follow these guidelines. Preferred method. Burning is the most traditional method, ensuring complete consumption of the fabric. For flags made of natural fibers, this is the recommended approach. The preferred method for you to get rid of an old American flag is to burn it. A lot of you didn't know that. That's not a legal guideline, by the way. That's just preferred method. Okay, so, and that's not according to, I might have to explain that to you. That's not just according to Microsoft, okay? Government's preferred method of retiring American flag. U.S. State Department, okay? Just so you know that this wasn't Bill Gates saying this, all right? Flag retirement ceremonies, mini flags, yada, yada, yada. Once the disposable balls are full, rules on how to fly the flag, American Legion. Oh, come on, just give us the goddamn thing, all right? Boom. Okay, well, there it is. They're burning the flag right there. American flag ceremony, participants stand in line. Oh, Jesus Christ, they're really going to just make a whole fucking thing out of it. Just tell us what the thing is, you guys. Well, how do you get rid of them? The flags, as the crowd salutes, the flag details dips the retired flags into kerosene and puts them on a rack over a fire. Okay, this is the State Department. This is defense.gov. How to properly dispose of worn U.S. flags. Okay, this is government guidelines, not Bill Gates guidelines, not Microsoft guidelines, not Google guidelines. That's government guidelines. How you properly dispose of a retired flag is you burn it. Okay, so this law right here is saying, wait. You're saying that it's illegal to burn a flag, but only if it upsets people, not if people are okay with it because it's quote unquote deemed respectable. And you can't outlaw the same action exclusively off of other people's opinions on it, right? So this is discriminating upon viewpoints. All right. So, and for the record, I think that's based. I do think that's based. So, dissent. Writing for the dissent, Justice Stevens argued that the flag's unique status as a symbol of national unity outweighed symbolic speech concerns, and thus the government could lawfully prohibit flag burning. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. I did not know that. That was Justice Stevens. Let's see. Where's the... Here we go. Full case summary. Oh, that we were already on the full case. Oh, and activity package. Is that going to be it? Here we go. Maybe not. We don't care about that. Hold on. Give me a second. This is applying it to other things now. Okay, well, we don't want that. We just want, I actually want the dissents. Which, this is the facts. This is just facts and case summaries. Okay, well, we're not going to read the dissents or how they got to this ruling. We might come back to it at the end of the stream, though, because we still got at least 40 minutes in the stream. So we might come back to it. I will link this in the description of the YouTube video, as always, for anybody that wants to go out and read this. And we might even, you know what I'm going to just do is Texas versus Johnson, 1989. Full, let's see, decision? Full decision. Will that give us what we want? Opinions and dissents. Boom, booyah. Okay. Okay. I'm just reading it. Give me a second. Okay. Three. All right. This looks like it's it. This is our opinions and dissents. And let's see, when did dissents come in? Gosh, got a lot of footnotes and everything in there. This definitely is going to be a big. Okay, okay. Okay, interesting. So this is it, though. This is everything you need. These are the opinions and dissents to Texas versus Johnson. I am going to add this, and you guys will have that in the description of the YouTube video. So you can go home or so you can, after this video, you can go watch it for yourself. Okay, or read it for yourself, excuse me, and hear how they got to that decision, what exactly the thought process was. Okay, so that's facts and case summary of Texas versus Johnson. Ultimately, they ruled that no, you can't arrest somebody for burning the flag just because it incites anger in others. Okay. And again, over here, they're saying the Supreme Court has never ruled that you can't burn the flag if it leads to imminent lawless action. If burning the flag leads to imminent lawless action, that is not protected speech. And it is true that they did not rule anything about that. We'd have to go into their dissents to see if there's something in the opinions in the dissents that the Supreme Court justices gave that specifically references imminent, burning the flag and causing imminent lawless action. Ideally, that's what we would do. But you saw how long that is. That would take way over the stream. So, and that might be something we do at a later date, or we'll do a little bit at the end of the stream then, you know what I'm saying? So, anyways, United States versus Eichmann. This is the second court case that I was able to find 2 out of 2. There might be others. I didn't find any, but that doesn't mean they're not there. That just means I might have fucked it up. But this is the second court case involving the burning of the American flag. Okay. So, this is a decision, opinions and dissents. This is okay. So here's the syllabus. After this court held in Texas versus Johnson that a Texas statute criminalizing desecration of the United States flag in a way that the actor knew would seriously offend onlookers was unconstitutional as applied to an individual who had burned a flag during a political protest, Congress passed the Flag Protection Act of 1989. The act criminalizes the conduct of anyone who knowingly mutilates, defaces, physically defiles, burns, or maintains on the floor or ground or tramples upon a United States flag, except conduct related to the disposal of a worn or soiled flag. Wait, what? Congress passed the Flag Protection Act. The act criminalizes the conduct of anyone who does that. Subsequently, appellees were that's why it's United States versus Eichmann, because the Congress attempted to pass the Flag Protection Act of 1989, which would criminalize destroying the flag in any other way other than proper disposal, right? Subsequently, appellees were prosecuted in the district courts for violating the act, some for knowingly burning several flags while protesting various aspects of the government's policies, and others, in a separate incident, for knowingly burning a flag while protesting the act's passage. The same thing that guy just did in front of the White House the day that the executive order was passed, okay? So, in each case, appellees moved to dismiss the charges on the grounds that the act violates the First Amendment. Both district courts, following Johnson Supra, held the act unconstitutional as applied and dismissed the charges. Okay? Held. Appellee's prosecution for burning a flag in violation of the act is inconsistent with the First Amendment. The government concedes, as it must, that appellee's flag burning constituted expressive conduct, and this court declines to reconsider its rejection in Johnson of the claim that flag burning as a mode of expression does not enjoy the First Amendment's full protection. It is true that this act, unlike the Texas law, contains no explicit content-based limitation on the scope of prohibited conduct. Okay? No explicit content-based limitation or on the scope of the prohibited conduct. What that means, again, content-based, content neutral. Remember, we looked up content neutral. That means this law contains no words that are explicitly saying, like they did over here, discriminating upon viewpoint. There is no language even though the Flag Protection Act that Congress passed in 1989 did not contain any language that was content-based, limitations that were content-based, meaning any language that was discriminated upon viewpoint, right? Because content neutral means that it's doesn't matter what the content is, it's held for all forms of expression, regardless of what the viewpoint is within that mode of expression, right? This content based would mean that you're explicitly prohibiting certain kinds of expression because of the viewpoint that's being expressed in the expression. You understand what that means? Hopefully, I explained that right. I think I did a pretty good job of explaining that, actually. I'm pretty fucking proud of myself. Okay. Nevertheless, it is clear that the government's asserted interest in protecting the physical integrity of a privately owned flag in order to preserve the flag's status as a symbol of the nation and certain national ideals is related to the suppression and concerned with the content of free expression. The mere destruction or disfigurement of a symbol's physical manifestation does not diminish or otherwise affect the symbol itself. So they're saying, okay, well, we disagree because they're not destroying the actual American flag. They're destroying a physical manifestation of they're not destroying the ideas that it stands for. They're destroying the physical manifestation of those ideals, which doesn't affect those ideals themselves. The government's interest is implicated only when a person's treatment of the flag communicates a message to others that is inconsistent with the identified ideals. The precise language of the Act's prohibitions confirms Congress's interest in the communicative impact of flag destruction, since each of the specified terms, with the possible exception of Burns, unmistakably connotes disrespectful treatment of the flag and suggests a focus on those acts likely to damage the flag's symbolic value. And since the explicit exception for disposal of worn or soiled flags protects certain acts traditionally associated with patriotic respect for the flag, thus the act suffers from the same fundamental flaw as the Texas law, and its restriction on expression cannot, quote, be justified without reference to the content of the regulated speech. Okay, so without reference to the content of the regulated speech. I mean, to be honest, that actually sounds to me, and that's based off of Booz versus Berry. We'd have to go into that ruling now, but that's where ultimately they said you can't justify it. If it cannot be justified without reference to the content of the regulated speech, then it's not a rule that should regulate speech. It must therefore be subjected to the most exacting scrutiny, and for the reasons stated in Johnson Supra, the government's interest cannot justify its infringement on First Amendment rights. This conclusion will not be reassessed in light of Congress's recent recognition of a purported national consensus favoring a prohibition on flag burning, since any suggestion that the government's interest in suppressing speech becomes more weighty as popular opposition to that speech grows is foreign to the First Amendment. Let me reiterate that, read that again. This for my own, so I understand it. This conclusion will not be reassessed in light of the national consensus at the Congress's recent recognition of a purported national consensus prohibiting flag burning, since any suggestion that the government's interest in suppressing freedom of speech becomes more weighty, as popular opposition to that speech grows, is foreign to the First Amendment. Means nothing. Okay. While flag desecration, like virulent ethnic and religious epithets, vulgar repudiations of the draft, and scurrilous caricatures. I don't know that word scurrilous. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what that means. Like virulent ethnic, okay, and we already read that, is deeply offensive to many. The government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea itself offensive or disagreeable. And I think that is based. Just because society doesn't like your idea does not mean that they can prohibit the expression of that idea, okay? And, somebody might say something to the effect of, well, what about pornography? What about that? And it's like, we do control pornography, and we control pornography not because it's offensive or disagreeable, but because this is material that one can be, what's the word? It is material that can be harmful. I mean, it's controlled material, kind of like cigarettes, firearms, alcohol. There's a particular age limit associated with it where we don't want children having it. And it's more than just you find pornography to be offensive or disagreeable. And for the record, they're not prohibiting the expression of pornography. They're regulating the sale and the creation of pornography, because this creation of it does result sexual acts. And we're all aware that in the porn industry, it is very possible for a woman to get raped for non-consensual sex to happen. And we've heard stories of that happening, young girls getting drugged and then being asked to do things they normally wouldn't do, and thus they actually can't give consent because they're not in a what is it, sober frame of mind in order to do that. They can't give consent when they're fucked up like that. Okay, so they don't prohibit necessarily the expression of it. You can make a porno, okay, but they regulate the sale and distribution and the creation of it, right? That's what they're regulating with pornography. Now there is some regulations on the expression. For example, you can't have sex with kids. Okay, no kiddie porn shit is allowed. No bestiality is allowed. Okay, but that's because those two things themselves are illegal. In order for you to create pornography that involves children or animals, you would already have to break the law. Okay, because the law doesn't allow you to have sex with animals because animals can't give consent, and it's fucking weird. And the law doesn't allow you to have sex with children. Okay, because they also can't give consent, right? And it's fucking weird. So those two things, you're not allowed to do that by law in any capacity. So of course you're not going to be allowed to videotape something like that and then call it expression, because you're breaking the law just by making this form of expression. You see what I'm saying? So ultimately, son of a bitch. Oh, what was that? Oh, okay. I don't know what I clicked on there. What did I click on there? Ah, okay. This is kind of nice. Yeah, so we did kind of read what already happened, though. There's a bunch of people. Congress passed the Flag Protection Act or something to that effect of 1989. A bunch of people were arrested. Yeah, Flag Protection Act of 1989. A bunch of people were arrested for burning the flag. They appealed their arrests, and the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. So this isn't a Supreme Court ruling. This is District Court ruling in the District of Columbia, yes, right? Or is that's the actual... Let's see. Oh, it is. United States Supreme Court. It is. Okay, my bad. My bad. Apologize. So, yeah, I did go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled, no, same thing. You can't do it. Here's for the reason. The reasons are clearly stated right up here. And I want to say clearly, like, they could be a lot clearer in their reasons. But ultimately, yeah, you can't do that. People are still... Congress cannot pass an act that says you're not allowed to burn the flag, because burning the flag is freedom of expression. And the only reason you're passing a law to stop people from burning the flag is because people find it offensive. And the freedom of the First Amendment protects offensive language. Sorry, I just had a brain fart there. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what some other people are saying about this. So, in a nutshell, right? Okay, we read the executive order, and we read the Supreme Court ruling that the executive order references. And we've read this executive order as well. It's not referenced, or we've read, this decision that wasn't referenced in the executive order. But what the executive order says, that the Supreme Court has not ruled on flag burning for the purpose of inciting violence, that's true. It seems like they're true. The inciting violence, you would want to get into the dissents and the opinions of the judges in both these cases and make sure none of them specifically said anything about it. But as far as the rulings on the decisions themselves went, there was nothing. They did not make a decision on whether or not it's okay to burn the flag for the purpose of inciting violence or while committing another crime. Okay. So that's what they're saying. And that's in the EO, what the EO is actually doing. And that's important to note what the EO is actually doing. Because like I said, a lot of people online aren't aware of what's actually happening. If it's possible, they do 100% believe. We're going to put, we're going to put this back over. Yeah. A lot of people do believe that they outright, Jesus. I'm going to put that over here. I for some reason, my slides are all fucked up, but that's another one too. Okay. But a lot of people are of the opinion that you can't burn a flag at all, period. And that's not the case. That's not what the EO is saying. Okay. You can debate whether or not the executive order is still correct or not, but based off of what it's actually doing, not what you think it's doing. Okay. So here is Matt Walsh on the subject. Give me a second. I got nose noises. Okay. He says, "This is why I have no patience for the free speech argument for burning the American flag. We don't have free speech in this country. If they're going to throw people in jail for saying a bad word, then yes, I want you thrown in jail for desecrating my flag. We aren't playing by two different sets of rules anymore. And what he says there, and what he's referencing, is Shiloh Hendricks, the woman who called a young black child, I forget how old the child was, racial slurs. She called this little boy the N word. And I don't remember exactly what happened. I believe it was she caught him like stealing something from her child's diaper bag or something to that effect. And she called him the N word, this little boy. And I think he was like 6 or something like that. And then a black man overheard this situation, was upset with the way she had handled it, and then videotaped her. And she told him, yeah, you're an N word too, flipped off the camera, and that was that, right? Okay, so that was happening in that situation. Here, right it goes. Okay, showing Hendricks calling a child a racial slur, yada, yada, yada. And ultimately, yeah, she's getting charged with 3 counts of disorderly conduct. Okay, so they are saying she can get up to a maximum of 90 days in jail, 3 months, and or a $1,000 fine. Oh, she's in Minnesota. Well, that's why. That's why that's happening. Minnesota doesn't give a fuck about your right to say or do anything. They don't. Sorry, if you live in Minnesota, fuck your state. It's got some of the worst self-defense laws I've ever heard, and I think it's preposterously disgusting. Your self-defense laws in that state, they really do upset me to an extraordinary degree. I will note here. I'm going to pop back over here. The executive order, I'm not really that concerned with it, to be perfectly honest with you. It doesn't really burn my ass whether it gets passed or doesn't get passed. I don't care all that much because I don't burn the flag. And so this isn't going to affect me in any way, shape, or form in my personal life. So ultimately, I just don't care all that much. Okay, it's something that's happening in my country, so I'm interested. A lot of people are talking about it online, and it's a very easy thing to look into. It takes no amount of time to just look into the executive order, look into the Supreme Court cases, understand what their rulings are, and then decide for yourself, okay, so this is what they're doing. This is what it could potentially result in. This is why they're doing it. Like, this is what the Supreme Court has to say about it. We'll see where it goes. Okay, it's really easy to research, which makes it an easy topic to talk about in a 2 or 3 hour time span. They can research in a 2 or 3 hour time span and help formulate opinions on. But ultimately, my opinion is I just don't really care. If it gets passed, then it gets passed. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't. And it's not going to be any skin off my nuts just in and of itself getting passed, okay? Because I don't burn the flag. I have no reason to burn the flag. It doesn't matter to me. So, that is something to say there. But let's go back over here. So I'm not particularly passionate about this in one way or the other. But when it comes to Minnesota's self-defense laws, I'm very passionate about that. I think your state laws suck when it comes to defending yourselves. I think it's horrible. But, so yeah, she's in Minnesota, and she is now getting charged with 3 counts of disorderly conduct. Okay, according to Philosophy Cat right here, do they say that? Hold on. Okay, it's not saying anything in there about the 3 counts. So, I don't know, we'll see. But, yeah, ultimately, I'm going to be honest, like, I don't, let's see here. Okay. When it comes to Matt Walsh's, this is what's the word that I'm looking for? This is a potentially solid argument. If you are going to go arresting people for saying the N-word, then yeah, why the fuck can't we arrest you for burning the flag? Explain it. Oh, you can't, because it's freedom of expression. That's it. And again, the argument there is fighting words, and you just read in the EO, action amounting to fighting words. That's what that fighting words thing is. A lot of people don't know fighting words is even a thing. If you don't know what fighting words is, let me introduce you to the concept. Fighting words doctrine, is it? That might be it. I usually type in fighting words Supreme Court, but ultimately, let's just get the quick AI rundown. Okay, fighting words doctrine is a legal principle in the U.S. law that allows for certain types of speech to be unprotected under the First Amendment if they are intended to incite violence or provoke a retaliatory response. If they are intended to incite violence. What does that sound like? intended to incite violence, likely to incite imminent lawless action. Okay, this is it. This is it right here. Okay, this is a point that does need to be made. Yes, people don't realize this, but yes, if you walk up to a person in America and you say something to them with the intention of inciting violence or provoking a retaliatory response, that is not protected under the First Amendment. Okay, it's not. And there's a whole bunch of rulings on this, excuse me, especially in Ohio for some reason. There was like multiple in Ohio when I was reading about this. Ohio seems to just love to arrest people for saying things. I don't know what's going on in your state, but you fuckers arrest people left and right for saying words that hurt your feelings. Just, it is what it is. Sorry, go look into it. Your state has arrested so many people for it. But regardless, that is a thing. Okay, and a lot of people don't realize that. That's a thing in America. So if you walk up to somebody like, what's her face? Damn it, where are we at? Shiloh Hendricks here, okay, and call somebody the N-word, that can be considered, no, that isn't protected speech because it is potentially inciting for the purpose of inciting violence. Okay, now I think they're going to have a hard time approving it in her case because when she's saying it, she's holding a little child. You can't convince me that she called a 6-year-old child the N-word in hopes that the child would in order to provoke a retaliatory response from the child. You can't convince me of that whatsoever. No, she wasn't looking to get in a fight with the 6-year-old. She wasn't trying to get the 6-year-old to punch her. That wasn't happening. So you're going to have a hard time in her case, I think, showing that this is inciting violence using fighting words. We don't know if that's exactly what they're saying here, but ultimately, yeah, this is where this is coming from. And they give you disorderly conduct. That's why they can give you the disorderly conduct charge, is because you potentially used fighting words that would have incited a violent episode. Okay, now, I don't think they're going to get that far with it. If you read into, and we're not going to read into all of them because there's so many of them, and it's a little bit off topic, but if you read into the fighting words doctrine, the Supreme Court's rulings on the fighting words doctrine, you will see that there's a lot of cases where if you can say something bad to somebody, like in one of these cases, a man was walking down the street saying, "Burn the N-words." Okay, and you know what I'm saying. And he was walking down the street saying that. And they ruled that that wasn't fighting words because it didn't incite violence. Okay, yeah, he was walking down the street saying that, but he wasn't saying that to any one particular person for the sake of inciting violence from them. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Ultimately, a lot of these have ruled because violence wasn't incited, then you can't prove that it was designed to incite violence, or it's difficult to, And so they're probably going to have a very hard time proving that in Shiloh Hendricks' case, that what she was using was fighting words. I think particularly, especially in the video, it seems like she's angry. Okay, and that's the thing, is people say a lot of shit when they're angry. That doesn't mean they want to fight you. It means that you've upset them and they want to hurt your feelings. Not the same as specifically saying something with the intention of, and this is why the fighting words doctrine is bullshit. I'll tell you right now, the fighting words doctrine is bullshit because you don't know, people can say mean things to each other, but they're not intended to incite violence. They're angry. You upset them first, and now they're saying something to hurt your feelings, okay? And that's not the same thing as they are attempting to get you to retaliate to them. Not the same thing whatsoever. So, and ultimately, it results in things like this. And ultimately, this results in things like this. You see what I'm saying? Because Shiloh Hendricks is now getting charged with 3 counts of disorderly conduct for saying the N-word, Matt Walsh says, I don't give a fuck. I'm taking free speech away from all the rest of you assholes because look what you're doing right here. Okay, we're going to charge white people with saying the N-word. Okay. We're going to charge all of you leftists who burn the flag. That's what it is. Okay? Fighting words. Well, and here's the thing. I hate to say it, but there is a consistency there. It should be just a natural derp kind of moment. When you create weapons, the weapons you use against others will be used against you. Okay, it will be, especially on the political battlefield. Here in America, you devise a weapon to hurt the other side. The other side is going to adopt that weapon if it's successful, and they're going to use it to hurt you. That's what it is. Okay, these fighting words laws, I don't know exactly where they came from. We'd have to go back. I mean, again, there's so many court cases involved with this. It's kind of all jumbled up in my brain. But ultimately, what it's being used for nowadays is situations like this where we want to make an example. They're doing that with the guy in Cincinnati, Ohio, who just got jumped at the I don't want to know say jump, but he was mobbed for damn sure. He was mobbed by a group of black guys. The white guy who got mobbed by a group of black guys and got his ass kicked, and then one of them knocked out his girlfriend or a random woman who was just stepping in to try to help. Um, yeah, that guy. They're charging him with disorderly conduct in Ohio for saying the N word to one of the guys and starting the whole thing off. Basically, he said the N word, called somebody the N word. That guy that lit up the whole thing, and that's what started the whole brawl. Okay. And they're saying that, and that one that might fit under fighting words. That absolutely might fit under fighting words. That one has a much better chance. But if we're doing this, okay, only explicitly to punish one group of people who's saying one specific word that you don't like, then yeah, the other group is going to start using it for the same reason. Okay. After this, now any black person says anything bad about white people, people like Matt Walsh are going to be coming in and saying, okay, we're going to arrest you for that. Yeah. Those are fighting words. Absolutely. You're going to get the same thing. You create weapons, use them against others. Those weapons are going to be used against you. So just be careful when you're creating weapons. Be careful when you're making enemies. That's the reality there. But I don't know specifically for me if this argument is, if I like this argument. My ultimate argument here would be get rid of fighting words then. If we want to live in a world where we do have freedom of speech. We want a country where we have freedom of speech. I do want to live in a country where you can say what you want and burn the flag if you want, as long as you're not hurting anybody else or burning anybody else's flag. And if that's the case, then it isn't the correct thing to do isn't go ahead and start making laws that affect the other side. The correct thing here to do is force the other side to abide by the laws we have and remove the laws that are making this situation happen. That's the correct move to do. Remove the fighting words doctrine and all that bullshit. And you're just expected to be an adult in society. People say bad things to you, you need to walk away. Or say bad things to them. But you punch them, then that's assault and that's it. You lack the emotional control, then that's it. Okay? Now, we would have to obviously put where do we delineate that? Like, for example, if somebody threatens to murder you, that's a bit different, right? Because ultimately, if somebody threatens to murder you and it's a promise to murder you, well, you might have a case for doing something then. You see what I'm saying? So, of course, you would have to draw new lines, but these lines where they're drawn are resulting in people on either side deciding to draw even more lines to hurt the other side. And that's ultimately what's happening right here. So I don't agree with that. I agree with just getting rid of all the lines altogether. And you can say whatever you want for the most part, and then drawing much more realistic lines. Okay. Carl Wuckert? I don't know who he is, but we got a thing here. Thomas Massey says, burning your own American flag is nenarded. I imagine he means retarded, or he was just censoring himself, which is hilarious if he's talking about freedom of speech and he ended up censoring himself. The irony, and I like Thomas Massey, but that's ironic. But it's not illegal, nor should it be. No one should want a federal government. Okay. Son of a bitch. Okay. So he continued there. We're not going to get to the rest of the post. Flag burning, whether it's American or Israeli, is covered by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Neither Congress nor the president nor a judge can make it illegal. So that's what we were kind of talking about earlier. Burning the Israeli flag is not illegal in America. Neither is burning the American flag. Thomas Massey right here. Carl Wuckert says, burning the American flag is stupid, but the flag means nothing if liberty dies. Okay. So that's an opinion. This guy says burn them all. Well, if you can't come together over that post, I don't know what's going to make you come together. Somebody here says read the EO. Yeah. The Supreme Court already decided this. What do people have to say to that? Good point. The Supreme Court already decided Roe v. Wade decades ago, yet somehow after a period of time that changed. Funny what happens when different ideologies acquire power and the will to use it. People always forget that pendulum swings for some reason. Interesting. I disagree with them. It's vandalism and it insults you and me and mostly the dead soldiers. Government who is treasonous. I mean, it's not vandalism if it's yours. Who is treasonous is not insulting, they're treasonous. Maybe they ought to worry about the woman on board who doesn't know what a woman is. They're talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson, I believe. Okay, but Ketanji Brown Jackson, for the record, didn't rule on this. So she's getting her. She doesn't understand what they're talking about. When they said the Supreme Court already ruled on this, they ruled on it in 1989. Ketanji Brown Jackson wasn't on the Supreme Court when that happened. Only leftist flags are protected. The following people were charged for burning pride flags. I don't know if this is true. This is just Chat GPT and nobody commented on it. We're going to get to that. We might as well get to that here anyways because we're getting close to the end. But just wanted to give you that. Count Dankula, not even an American, coming in with, if I remember, let's read his takes, but I thought it was fairly based. Okay. He does have a lot of base takes. Regarding the current flag burning conversation, if someone owns a flag, regardless of what it is, and they choose to burn it, that's free speech. It's their property to do with as they wish. If you're a patriot and you don't like seeing your flag being burned, ironically, that flag is a symbol that gives them the freedoms to do just that. But if you're, well, it is a symbol that gives them, I don't know if it's the symbol itself that gives them, but it symbolizes the laws that give people the freedoms to do just that, right? But if you're one of the LGBTers that is defending the burning of the American flag, but you think there should be prison time for burning the rainbow flag, then you can just shut the fuck up. All of you can voice your approval as much as you like, and I hope you do, but no, you can't ask for criminal consequences for it. I hope that clears things up, but it probably won't. All right, kind of based, for the most part. Well, philosophical patriot here. You're falling for the PSYOP. Texas versus Johnson settled that argument in a 5-4 Supreme Court decision in 1989 that states flag burning is protected under our First Amendment. This is not up for any debate as it is settled in the court of law. Well, the court of law, I mean, that's what the Supreme Court does. It debates the laws and whether or not they're still correct. But what the executive order is attempting to do, and an executive order is just a way to set policy within departments, is prosecute people who cause other crimes to occur as a result of flag burning, like inciting a riot. Yeah. This guy, I don't think he understands what the Supreme Court is supposed to do. Settled law is always continuously going to be debated. Not all of them will, but a lot of them will be. This is that very first guy right there. What we were saying earlier in the stream, why not just charge them with the other crimes so you can give them more time? But ultimately, where was it I read? Yeah, as far as creating extra laws, I don't know if they're creating laws with the CO or not. It sounds like they're wording it as if they're not creating a law, even though they are. Because there's no law that says flag desecration. So if they're creating flag desecration, I guess they have to charge you with something else. And then I don't know how they would add that multiplier, though, because a hate crime is a law. That was signed into law. Remember, the hate crime is the equivalent force multiplier in the same way that the flag burning is, right? According to the EO. The hate crime laws are written into law, though. They were passed by Congress. Laws have to be passed by Congress. They can't be made by executive orders. So it does sound like they're creating a law without distinctly saying that they're attempting to create a law, right? Okay, but let's look at this. I did want to go through this before we end. Burning a flag is not a crime is greater than burning either flag is a crime. Based, what is this, Rothmus? Based fucking Rothmus. Give him a heart. Yes, I do agree. Burning a flag is not a crime. Ultimately, I think is better than burning either flag as a crime. If burning the American flag is free speech, why is a man in prison for burning a pride flag? Well, let's get to that. That brings us to Christopher Rufo, which, by the way, I do like some of the things Christopher Rufo does. I absolutely do. Also, Robbie Suave down here. Funny enough, I like him a little bit less than Christopher Rufo, but I think he's more based than Christopher Rufo in this particular subject. Robbie Suave says, serious question. For someone who occasionally has the administration's ear, meaning Christopher Rufo, wouldn't it be better to issue an executive order that clarifies burning the pride flag as First Amendment protective activity? Excuse me. In other words, address the wrong instead of introducing additional ones? Which was what I was trying to say. I might not have said it clearly, but I was trying to say with the Matt Walsh post, right? Matt Walsh post, right? Is, yeah, you might not like the laws regarding fighting words, but instead of just adding your own laws, shouldn't we repeal the fighting words doctrine instead so that there's no such thing? Wouldn't that be the whole thing? Okay, so, and Robbie Swab is saying the same thing here with the pride flag. But let's look into this. 15 years in Iowa jail for burning a pride flag. Christopher Rufo made a post. His post says, I'm sorry, but as long as this is the status quo, I'm not going to work myself into a state of hysteria about Trump's executive order on burning the American flag. Okay, so he's making the same argument that Matt Walsh is making. Matt Walsh was, in my opinion, making a better argument because he's talking specifically about a person getting disorderly conduct charges for saying a word. And that is happening. And that is what happened, as far as we know. Okay. Nobody has came out and said that any of her other actions were disorderly conduct. Her only action that was considered disorderly conduct was calling people the N-word. Okay. And the only way that they can get to that disorderly conduct without other actions being involved, like her yelling, like shoving at people, threatening people, things like that, throwing stuff at people. If something like that happened, which it doesn't happen in the video, but say something like that did happen, then okay, I'll stand corrected. But ultimately, the only avenue they have for that is the fighting words doctrine. The fighting word doctrine is what makes it, damn it, shoot, I just, it makes it, I just lost the words that were in my brain. That's what disorderly conduct. Whew, too many Twizzler sticks and weed. The disorderly conduct charge only comes from the fighting words doctrine. As far as I'm aware, in Shiloh Hendricks' case. Okay, that's the only thing she did that could result in disorderly conduct is she said words that they are saying fall under fighting words. Because that has happened before where people have used racial slurs and they've deemed it a fighting word. It's also happened when people said racial slurs and they didn't deem it a fighting word. Okay, so that level of inconsistency, again, like I said earlier, laws need to be very clearly stated because the clearer stated a law is, the easier it is to follow. The fighting words doctrine is not clear. It is massive fucking gray area. Okay, there's people who have said racial slurs and they say, nope, this isn't included in the fighting words doctrine. Then there's people who did say the exact same racial slur and they say, yep, that's fighting words. Okay, no. If that's the kind of rulings this is resulting in, then fuck no. This is a horrible fucking law, you know? But, whereas that is a bit more of a logical argument, again, I would still pose the argument to Matt Walsh, the same one that Robbie Suave is saying. Let's get rid of both of them, including fighting words then. Any way that you can give somebody a disorderly conduct charge just for saying a word, let's get rid of that. But Christopher Rufo is using a slightly different argument. It's the same argument, but different subject matter. He's saying, hey, if this guy right here can get 15 years in an Iowa jail for burning a pride flag, then fuck you. You should go to jail for burning the American flag. 3 Washington teens are facing 10 years in jail after making skid marks on LGBTQ Rainbow Road mural while riding e-scooters. Okay, so let's look into this. 15 years in Iowa jail for burning pride flag. A U.S. judge has handed down a sentence of at least 15 years to a man who stole an LGBTQ pride flag from a church and burned it outside a strip club. Okay, so he didn't get 15 years for burning a pride flag. He got 15 years for stealing an LGBTQ pride flag and burning it. And burning somebody else's property. Now, again, what did I say? It's a force multiplier. This is a hate crime. The hate crime is a force multiplier. Which is why I disagree with it. This guy, this is what it results in. This guy stole somebody's pride flag, which you can't do that, and burnt it. That's destruction of private property. Okay, that's a misdemeanor more than likely. And now he's getting 15 years in prison. Okay, because it turned into a hate crime. But he did not get arrested for burning a pride flag. He got arrested for stealing somebody else's pride flag and burning it. Okay? Excuse me, hold on. he was already found guilty the prior month of hate crime harassment, reckless use of fire, and being a habitual offender. Well, I don't know what that last bit meant. I don't know how you can get found guilty for being a habitual offender, but he had already been found guilty of doing things exactly like this. Okay, so this isn't his first time doing it. He's done it. They said stop doing it, and he went and he did it again. Sounded like, okay, well, fuck you. We're gonna go ahead and throw down the gauntlet on you, right? Okay, and he was making threats, dangerous curves, a strip club. Called the police saying a man was making threats in the bar. They kicked him out. After leaving the club, he traveled to the church and ripped down the flag, then returned to the strip club where he used a lighter fluid to burn the flag in the street. He also threatened to burn down the bar. Okay, you can't do that neither. You can't threaten to burn down a motherfucking bar. He told the jailhouse interview, the local media in a jailhouse interview, that he was guilty as charged. It was an honor to do that. It's a blessing from the Lord. Okay, well, fair enough. Okay, so yeah, and it doesn't tell us exactly. But here's the point: the guy didn't. This is BBC shit fucking title to your argument, and it is BBC. BBC, you people suck. You do. You suck at your fucking jobs. You're shit journalists. Anybody who watches my show knows that I bitch constantly about journalists, because 90% of you fucking suck at your jobs and you're shitty human beings. And it's for reasons like this. And it's probably not the journalist. I imagine that's the editor who does that, correct? Maybe not. Whoever it is that writes the titles for your articles for clickbait, 15 years in Iowa jail for burning a pride flag. That's not what happened. And this is the end result of you using these clickbait fucking article titles. So, BBC... And do you not have a name for the person that wrote your fucking article? You're too pussy to even put that on your website? Looks like it. You're shit. You're cunts. That's what you are, BBC. You're a bunch of fucking cunts who use shit. What is this? Clickbait titles for your articles when you should be doing serious journalism. You're not a serious journalist. You're not a serious journalistic outlet. You're shit. And you suck. Okay, so... let's see. 3 teens. Here we go. And here's the other one. Yeah. The other thing, Christopher Rufo. I couldn't find the Mail Online article, but here's the exact same thing. 3 teens facing hate crime charges after pride flag burned in Manville. Oh, this is a different one. Excuse me. 3 teenagers were arrested and are facing hate crime charges after a woman's pride flag was burned and left in the street. Okay, again, same thing here. These kids... Stephanie Cook and her roommate's flag was tossed into the street and burned. Again, they stole somebody else's flags and burnt it in the street. And now they're getting charged with criminal damage and a hate crime. Okay, so again, same thing. They're not getting charged with a hate crime for burning the LGBTQ flag. They're getting charged with a hate crime for burning somebody else's hate flag. 3 Washington teens are facing 10 years. Daily Mail, that's an X saying. Here we go. Let's look at this other article he posted. 3 Washington teens. Fucker. All the shit these journalists try to sell you. I just fucking hate journalists so much. Facing 10 years in jail after making skid marks on LGBT Rainbow Road mural while riding e-scooters. I understand the journalists don't make the fucking website. Okay, I'm getting angry for no reason, or getting angry at them for something that's not their responsibility. But still, so many of you journalists just fucking suck. Okay. 3 Washington teens could face 10 years in jail after being arrested for making skid marks on an LGBTQ Rainbow Road mural while riding e-scooters. This is in Spokane, Washington. 19-year-old Russian V.V. Turco and 2 unnamed minors were arrested on Wednesday for first-degree malicious mischief after vandalizing the Rainbow Pride mural that sits in front of yada yada yada. Turco appeared in court on Thursday along with legal counsel. Prosecutors requested a $15,000 bond that will cover the approximate cost of repainting the mural. $15,000 to repaint that mural? Oh, come on, that's silly. The teen was later released on his own recognizance in the condition that he does not return to the crosswalk or other suspects. Yada, yada, yada. So they were making these skid marks. Come on, you're fucking telling me $15,000 to repaint that. Don't give me that shit. That is bullshit. That's fucking stupid. Okay, court records cite the witnesses confronting the teens with some taking photos with their phones. One of the minors hit back saying, F you, F word, and go to hell, as per the news outlet. Okay, so that didn't help his that didn't help his position. He regrets that. Okay, So more nose noises. In March, Washington Governor Jay Inslee signed legislation to redefine the state's hate crime statute to include the defacement of property, now considered a felony and punishable by up to 5 years in prison or up to $10,000 fine. Okay, that's the force multiplier, right? The update was due to the original bill created in October in response to the vandalism of LGBTQ landmarks in Spokane. Okay, so ultimately, what this is, and I don't know, let's look to see if these kids actually got 10 years. When they say, again, just like the BBC, okay, these fuckers like to use the most clickbaity titles they can. 3 Washington teens are facing 10 years. Is that the maximum? Because if that's the maximum, realistically, they're not giving them that, okay? You know, I got arrested when I was 15 for a few things, and the maximum sentence that I had was like 45 years or something like that. You see what I'm saying? And I ended up doing a year and a half of probation, okay? So bullshit. Just because they could potentially face that doesn't mean that they're actually facing that. Okay. Woke insanity. Scooter riding teens arrested for scuffing up Pride Street mural. Yeah, again, saying that right there costs $15,000 is absolute horseshit. No, get out of my face. Don't sell me things. You may get away with spray painting graffiti on statues of American heroes in the nation's capital. Who wrote this? Washington Times. But don't try putting skid marks on the Pride Street mural in Spokane, Washington. Okay, da 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 da. This is just giving us the anger that people have had towards this. It doesn't tell us. It won't give us the kids' names because they're kids. So teens defacing Pride mural case. Let's see if we can. Damn it! There we go. Charges dropped for teen. Charges dropped against 19-year-old accused of intentionally defacing Spokane Pride mural with scooter. Okay, so one of the 3 people arrested. So one of them, charges were completely dropped. By the prosecutors. Only one of them, though. And Washington. They're just repeating bullshit like all of you journalists do. You basically just fucking copy each other because you're crap. Reason magazine, is it illiberal to charge teen with felonies for vandalizing a pride crosswalk? Yeah, 100%. Felonies, that's absolutely illiberal. It's childish and pathetic. Most woke things are illiberal. I'm just going to tell you that right now. If you're watching my show and you're woke, you're not a liberal person. You're authoritarian. You have nothing to do with liberalism. You're the complete opposite of liberalism. So 3 teenagers, yada, yada, yada. Case pits 2 supposedly left-leaning values against each other, a desire to promote acceptance, and the idea that people should not be arrested and imprisoned for victimless crimes, which ultimately this is a victimless crime. So it doesn't go over what ended up happening. It is vandalism, and they should get charged with vandalism, but again, because it has the hate crime multiplier, that vandalism had them at maximum 10 years in prison, okay? But I'm not seeing. Only one teenager got charges dismissed against him. Multiple arrests were made. Okay. And it's not, doesn't look like it's going to tell us. We're going to have to do a little bit more looking into this to decide what happened. Ultimately, one of them had their charges completely dropped, possibly the other two, but we don't know. In any case, yeah, again, this is more of the same thing. What they did was they defaced public property. If you see a mural on the ground that the city made and you deface it, that's vandalism. It is 100%. It's vandalism. They upped their charges of that vandalism using the force multiplier of the hate crime. Okay, and so this was Florida driver accused of intentionally doing burnouts on LGBTQ pride flag crosswalk mural. This was another instance. A lot of people said Dylan Brewer 19. This is the guy. No, this wasn't. Sorry. The other kid absolutely did. That was from the other instance. Okay. This guy also just happens to be 19. But yeah, so he did a burnout on a pride flag in Florida. And we'll just get over here, yada, yada, or get to it. He was charged with felony criminal mischief, damage to property over $1,000, and misdemeanor reckless driving. He was not charged with a hate crime. There was no hate crime in this particular instance. Okay, he was originally arrested and charged with criminal mischief, reckless driving, and evidence of prejudice, but had the later charge dropped and recently finished his probation sentence. Okay, so they dropped the charge against him too. Okay, fact check. Florida man who defaced pride intersection was not charged with a hate crime. Okay, so that's the guy we just talked about. Florida man charged with a hate crime for his pickup truck. Yada, yada, yada. The driver of the pickup was not charged with a hate crime. Prosecutors considered it after his arrest, but ultimately sided against it. They did charge him with it, but they dropped it. So that's what happened there. So ultimately, what I wanted to show you was get to this point. This is AI, I know, but I gave you enough evidence. No, in the United States, it is not illegal to burn a pride flag as a form of symbolic speech. Burning it is protected by the First Amendment, providing it does not endanger others or destroy public or private property belonging to someone else. Okay. Other laws could apply as those against hate crimes or reckless endangerments. Okay. So if you're again, this is the force multiplier, the same thing they're doing with the American flag now. If you do it, you burn a flag in the middle of the public park, they might say, oh, that's reckless endangerment because you could have lit the park on fire. And it's also a hate crime because you burnt a pride flag. So now we're going to throw you would have gotten a year in prison. Now you're going to get 20 years in prison. Like the guy who just got 15 years in prison. Okay. Which is extraordinarily excessive. 15 years in prison for stealing somebody's flag and burning it is insanely excessive. But that's what the force multiplier is. That's the point of it. You see what I'm saying? That's the entire point of the force multiplier, is to give you more time. And that is what I think, in my opinion, this EO is designed to do. It's going to be a force multiplier. I think if I had to tell you what I think Trump is doing, is the Supreme Court may or may not let this EO slide. I have no idea. We'll see. They will rule on it eventually, and we will see what they have to say about it. But I don't know how Trump feels about that. In any case, I think he's going to be using this EO for two things. One, this is going to help him get even more illegal immigrants at the anti-ICE raids. Okay, this is going to help him not just get illegal immigrants, but take people who may be in the process of naturalization, and this gives him an excuse to stop that naturalization process and kick them the fuck out. And two, this is a force multiplier that scares the kinds of people who would be burning American flags during anti-ICE protests and pro-Palestine protests. This scares them away from doing that. Okay, because we've had instances of both of those in America. Okay, in America, we have had people that showed up at pro-Palestine protests in Colombia that were burning the American flag. Then we had people who were showing up at anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles and other places that were burning the American flag. Okay, and in both instances, now in both of those instances, it is more than likely they would get arrested. They would get a shit ton of time, force multiplier, right? And this is a way for Donald Trump to essentially get rid of those specific people. Okay. We're going to see with this 20-year combat veteran, if he ends up getting that force multiplier, if we get a new headline that he's facing 15 years in prison, then you know that this isn't going to just apply to incitement of violence. This is gonna apply to this can be used almost at any capacity. You know, if you're burning a flag anywhere except your backyard, there's a good chance that you're going to get charged with something, and then the flag desecration is going to add to it, and it's going to be a big whole fucking mess. Okay, if that ends up being the case, and yeah, ultimately I do disagree with it, in the same way that I disagree with hate crime laws being a force multiplier. I disagree with that. I don't think I brought it up, but that, here, we're going to pop over here. I 100% disagree with that. I don't think hate crime needs to be a force multiplier. I think if you kill somebody, for example, you did it because, you can say, well, that doesn't mean that you hated him. It could have been a crime of passion or crime of this or that or whatever. And it's like, I really don't care. I don't care if you kill somebody because you hated him. And ultimately, that's not what hate crime laws do. Okay. We know that. It's called hate crime, but you're not proving that the other people hate them. You're just giving them more time because they're doing it because they're doing it for racist purposes, essentially. Not racist, but discriminatory purposes. They're killing the guy because they're killing another person because of that person's identity. And you're making that worse than killing another person because they pissed you off. And they're not worse. You killed a person, no matter what. Plain and simple. Boop, that's it, done. Okay? Killing a person should have you thrown in prison. It doesn't matter who it is. And then ultimately, yeah, I'm not going to sit and play these stupid fucking games with people who want to play this kind of games. We've very clearly seen hate crime laws, the overwhelming majority of them only go in one direction, okay? There was no hate crime laws being used for that white guy getting mobbed to death. Or not to death, but getting the shit beat out of him by a mob. And there never is going to be. They're never going to put hate crimes on black people who are explicitly hurting white people, or who are hurting white people explicitly, even if they're explicitly doing it because they hate white people. They're never going to charge them with that, okay? It's going to happen once in a blue moon comparative to the opposite. You see what I'm saying? And we all know that, okay? And anybody who wants to argue that or pretend like it's not happening, you're in your own la la land. I'm not going to argue with you because you're full of shit, and you know you're full of shit, and I know you're full of shit. We all know you're full of shit and where you stand. Go argue with somebody who you might convince you're not completely full of shit, but you're full of shit. No, we all know this. It moves very distinctly in one direction. Okay? If somebody were to, again, the exact same people who are trying to give kids 10 years for running over a pride flag mural don't want anybody to get any prison time for doing the same thing to an American flag. You see what I'm saying? So it only works in one direction. And we know that direction it's progressives. That's what this is. It's progressives who want very explicit identities protected and everybody else be damned and go fuck yourself. That is what it is. They want harder punishments for doing bad things to specific people and less punishments. So the direct implication is lesser punishments for doing other things to other people based off of immutable characteristics, which ultimately makes just them the racist that they claim to hate. That is what it is. That perfectly. I don't give a shit what anybody has to say about that. That's not up for debate as far as I'm concerned. So, no, everybody is equal. That's how you get over this. Everybody's treated equal under law. It is necessary to our society for everybody to be treated equal under the law because that is how you create a high trust society. Treating everybody equal under the law. If you can't treat everybody equal under the law, which for the record, there's been numerous times in America's history where they have not been able to do that. This is not the first time this has happened. The obvious ones that come to mind are women before they were given the right to vote and before feminism, right? And black people during Jim Crow. And then, of course, fucking slavery and gay people up until about the 90s, right? So no, America has a very long history of not treating people equal under the law. But America also, in every single instance, because of its liberal values, which are good, I do believe in, said, this is bad, and you can't do this, and we're not going to do this. We're wrong in doing this. We are not promoting the law fairly, equally amongst the citizens of this country, and that's a bad deal. That's going to result in a low-trust society. And they were correct. It does result in a low-trust society. So I disagree with the hate crime laws. Hands down. I don't believe in the force multiplier for them. And because I don't believe in that force multiplier, I don't theoretically believe in this force multiplier either. And this is one good thing. I wish I could find the tweet or the post or whatever they call the things on X nowadays. Somebody did leave, and it was just a random dude. I don't think he, I don't know, it was probably like a fucking janitor at school or something. But some random dude on X did say something that was interesting where he said, well, this could be the good side of this EO. is this EO would go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, upon reviewing the EO, and if they cut the EO down and say, no, this is unconstitutional, there's a really good chance that other people are going to be able to come in and say, okay, well, if that's constitutional, then so is hate crime laws, where we're using that as a force multiplier to give somebody 15 years in prison. And let's be real about that. Okay, what that guy did is shit, and he deserved to get arrested for it, but 15 years in prison for stealing somebody else's flag and burning it? Give me a fucking break, okay? Again, it's doing stuff like that that has created people like Matt Walsh and Christopher Rufo, who are going to look for reasons to do the same thing to you. You created the weapon. This is distinctly progressive lawmakers who created the weapon. Progressives who cheered that weapon on while it was being used. Well, now you got people like Matt Walsh and Christopher Rufo and their president, Donald Trump, okay, who are going to use that weapon that you created against you. Because that's how it works. And some of you are just too fucking stupid to understand that. You're just too goddamn dumb to understand that when you create weapons to hurt other people, people will see how effective that weapon is. And if it's effective, they will wield it against you. And that's what's happening right now. People saw how effective it was to ruin people's lives. Putting somebody in prison for 15 years is ruining their life. That's not punishment. It's ruining their life. If they murdered or raped somebody, then yes, that's sorry, but the punishment for that, because what you did is so fucking heinous that the punishment for that is going to ruin your life. You took somebody else's life, you psychopath. So no, your life, I'm not saying it should get ruined, like that's morally the correct thing to do, but logically, I can't bitch about your life getting ruined. You murdered an innocent person and took their ability to live, so of course you're going to get 15, 10, 20 years. Okay. But 15 years in prison, you're going to get out and it's going to be a completely different fucking world. Okay. That guy got out. He's going to be in his 50s or 60s. Any skill sets he had to enter the job market are going to be gone. He's not going to have a life after this. It's going to be a shit life. Some people, when they go in that long, they absolutely just go right back in because they can't function in the real world after 15 years. So what progressives cheered on, progressive voters, and what progressive lawmakers did in this circumstance was they made an example out of a man by ruining his life, using the hate crime force multiplier to make that example out of him, to drive the point home. If you fuck with our symbols and our groups of people that we want to protect, this is what's going to happen to you. We're going to ruin your life for stealing somebody else's pride flag and burning it. Okay, that's a weapon. And you wielded that weapon and you gave people decades in prison over it in some circumstances. And guess what? Now the weapon's going to be wielded against you. Now all you progressives who have friends who are burning American flags at your leftist protests, guess what? Guess what? Your friends are going to get the same treatment by the opposing side. So congratulations. You played yourself. Really, what that is, isn't that the meme? You played yourself? That's what it is. You did not look ahead to realize that the weapons you make are going to be wielded against you. You just don't understand the concepts. You're just too fucking stupid, which is probably why you're a far leftist, to be honest. So, any case, that's what it is. Like, I don't agree with the hate crime laws being used as a force multiplier to give people more time in prison than the law they committed or the crime they committed. If you murder somebody, it doesn't matter who they are. If they're gay, straight, black, white, man, woman, Christian, Muslim, you murder an innocent person, you go to prison. And it doesn't matter who that person was, it's the same amount of time in prison every time. There is differences between second degree and first degree murder, and I do believe in those. But ultimately, no crime is more or less punishable dependent on who hated the person because of their race. And ultimately, that is what hate crime laws devolve into. People say they don't. They're saying, no. We're giving them more time because they did it over discriminatory reasons. And I still disagree. Like I said, well, murder is murder. I don't give a shit why they did it. For the most part, that particular difference means nothing to me. They still murdered an innocent person. They still deserve to go to prison. And for the same, one's just as bad as the other. Okay. But that's not how it gets used. Like we illustrated. No, it is exclusively being used to protect specific identities. Nobody is giving out hate crimes when a black man beats up a white man. That's not happening. Nobody's doing that. Okay. So, we know what it is. Everybody knows the score. Progressives, a lot of them, are going to lie their asses off and pretend like that's not happening. The rest of us know it is, and them lying is just subversion. But in any case, I disagree with that. Equality across the board, You kill a gay person, it's the same thing as killing a straight person. You go to fucking prison because you're a psycho and you don't get to kill innocent people. You don't get to steal people's flags. It doesn't matter what the flag is. You don't get to burn other people's property. I don't care what the property is. Okay. It doesn't matter who owns that property or the reason for why you're burning the property. You don't get to do it. It's illegal. Okay. Plain and simple. Pretty easy. Standard across the board makes it way easier. So I don't agree with that. And I don't agree with the fighting words doctrine either. And both of those things could potentially be on the docket for the Supreme Court to rule on after they rule on this executive order. This executive order might result, if it gets struck down, by the Supreme Court, then there's a very serious chance that hate crime laws are also going to get struck down by court because it's the same concept. It's a force multiplier. Okay. That's going to be struck down now. And there's also a chance that fighting words are going to be struck down after that too, right? Because fighting words is the same, like Matt Walsh illustrated, fighting words is sorry, my headphones just died, so I'm trying to reconnect them while I'm speaking to you. The fighting words doctrine clearly delineates when what would otherwise be considered freedom of expression is no longer freedom of expression, and it uses the exact same reasoning as Trump's EO does. That if you are using what would otherwise be considered freedom of expression to incite violence, it's no longer freedom of expression, okay? And that's exactly the wording of fighting words, okay? So if fighting words aren't allowed, then okay. Here's the thing. There's going to be way more things that happen that there's going to be, if we continue down this path of outlawing everything because it could be used to incite violence, you just watch. There's going to be way more rules implemented. Okay. You are all going to live in a country where you need to walk on eggshells around each other. That's the ultimate end result of that. Okay. That's where we get towards in the end there. Everybody thinks, oh no, it's just going to stop where I wanted it. Yeah, just like the progressives thought that this was all going to stop at just hate crimes. And nobody was ever going to find their own force multiplier to fuck over progressives. Well, they ended up being wrong, didn't they? And just like that guy said, isn't it funny how shit changes when different ideologies get into power? Different ideologies are always going to get into power. Your enemies will eventually get power at one point in time. This isn't a war. This isn't warring Italy in the 1200s. Like, this isn't a thing. You can't cut the throats of your enemies and be rid of them. You're going to have to live in this country with them, and they will inevitably get power at some point, and they will wield the weapons against you that you wielded against them. So just know that. That's the reality. And so if we keep on this path, we're going to get more and more laws that make all various different kinds of freedom of expression ultimately illegal. Because there's numerous different forms of expression. If we sat here and thought about it, we can think of numerous examples how something could be used to incite violence, okay? So instead, we get rid of that. And if you are incited to violence over somebody else's words, that is your lack of self-control, and you go to prison for it, okay? And so this EO uses that exact same reasoning behind fighting words, and that may mean the fighting words doctrine gets kicked out too. That is one good thing about this EO. It might potentially result in all of this bullshit being taken away. Everybody is equal under the law now. Nobody else is. If you're kill a gay guy or a straight guy, it's the same time in prison. Doesn't matter. Because again, that is the final application of hate crime laws. It never happens exclusively because you said a naughty word. It does do that too. But ultimately, you're going to get a hate crime law if you kill a gay person. You're going to get a hate crime attached to that. It doesn't matter what you say. And we all know this, okay? Again, it's never going to go in the opposite direction. When a gay man kills a straight person, they're not going to get a hate crime. We know this, okay? It only goes in one direction, right? So now, there's no opportunity for you to do that. Killing a gay man is the same thing as killing a straight man, okay? Killing a trans woman is the same thing as killing a woman, okay? It's completely equal. Nobody is more or less equal than anybody else, more or less protected than anybody else, okay? And all speech is protected, even if it upsets you and angers you and makes you want to hurt somebody. That's a you problem, not the speaker's problem. And ultimately, If you get incited to violence because somebody said a naughty word to you, it's your lack of emotional control. You're the one that can't exist in polite society because, in a polite society, but you're the one that can't exist in a real society because in a real society, people are going to say things that upset you. And you need to be a big boy and have your big boy pants on and not get that to the point that you're hurting other people over words. Okay. And if you can't do that, then it's you. It's a you problem. So potentially this EO might resolve those issues. If they did, that would be interesting. And that could be something good that comes out of it. And that is the end of today's stream. So that was our Newsweek Wednesday for today. Hopefully y'all who were watching learned a lot. I think I had like 2 people watching, including you, Razor. I think Razor left because he's at work. But I appreciate you coming in, Razor, and always watching the show and chatting with me. Always appreciate your presence. Anybody else who is watching, I appreciate you tuning in. Anybody who watches this on YouTube, I hope you enjoyed yourself, especially if you got all this way through the video. I appreciate you watching this much. Please give the channel a like and subscribe if you don't mind. It helps me out a lot. And my next stream will be Friday because I'm streaming 3 days a week now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And Friday will be celebrities that we were supposed to do this a couple Fridays ago and I never got around to it. It is good guys in movies that were actually bad guys. There's 4 characters that people always, that were meant to be good guys in the movies, but now people have decided they're actually bad guys. And there's a debate about that. We're going to debate that Friday. Okay, so tune in for that. Anyways, y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much for listening. Hope you learned a lot, and hopefully I will see you Friday. Peace.